Recording in progress.
All right, I'm calling the meeting to order. Do you want to call the roll?
Commissioner Gupta,
Present.
Commissioner Metz,
Present.
Commissioner Croft,
Present.
Chair Scharf,
Present.
Vice Chair Mater,
Present.
Commissioner Tucker.
Present.
We have we have 5 present, 1 virtual.
Do we have any agenda changes or deletions?
No, Chair.
All right, moving on. Can I have a public comment? Let's move to public comment.
If any member of the public would like to speak on an item not on the agenda, please raise your hand or press star 9 now. We have 1 hand raised.
Okay.
Peter Dreckmeyer, you may speak.
Thank you. This is Peter Dreckmeyer, Policy Director for the Tuolumne River Trust. Thank you all for your service. You're doing great work. I sent you an email on Friday. It included a complaint I sent to the State Water Board regarding the SFPUC's unreasonable use of water, focused on the whole pattern of hoard and spill that we've talked about before. So we'll see where that goes. That was filed on Earth Day, and it happened that the SFPUC had a regularly scheduled meeting that day, but it got canceled, supposedly due to lack of a quorum. We had a lot of people lined up. We were going to try to educate the commissioners and didn't get that opportunity. It was a little suspicious because the week before, they had declined to participate in a water forum that the Palo Alto League of Women Voters invited TRT, the SFPUC, and BOSCA to participate in. And then following their decline, BOSCA used that as an excuse to say that they didn't want to participate either. So it's pretty clear that they don't want to have public dialogue about water issues, which is why Palo Alto's role has been so important. I do want to point out that yesterday, BOSCA did have a very good stakeholder meeting focusing on their new updated demand projections. They've got a study coming out at the end of the year. And it's a really great process. You know, they hear from everyone, good ideas come up. It's going to be a much better product. And we'd love to see more of that. So I thank the UAC for your engagement. I hope we'll have opportunities for study sessions, workshops. If we can get the SFPUC and BOSCA to come into town and answer questions, that would be really helpful. I'm hoping to hear back on the questions that the UAC encouraged the city to ask. We're making good progress, and I appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. Any other public speakers?
No additional hands raised.
Okay, we'll close public comment. I need a motion for approval of the minutes.
I have a motion for an amendment.
Okay, to the minutes.
To the minutes, that's right.
Okay, what's the concern with the minutes?
I move to amend to clarify the action component on page 37. I have a draft in written form. I don't know if it's easier to put that on the screen or if printed copies have been provided.
So do you think they didn't catch the minutes correctly? Is that the issue?
There are certain places where information is missing. If you look at page 37, for example, item 2 is blank. Certain aspects or nuances of the decisions were not included. We could go through each item if that's helpful, but I think the
Why
edits.
don't you put it on the screen if they can? Share your screen.
Is this the amended version that's being posted here?
So this is the version that's included in the agenda currently.
So what are the
And-
proposed amendments?
the amendment replaces this action section with this new action section.
Ah, that's what this is.
Oh, that's what this is.
Who furnished this list?
Not I.
Commissioner Tucker, those are Commissioner Gupta's amended minutes. I have printed them and provided a copy for the commission.
It's on page 37. Let's see.
I think it is worth reviewing these. I don't feel prepared to review these in real time vis-a-vis any consistencies or inconsistencies with what might exist in the present minutes. And I'm just concerned about if there's internal contradiction, Gustav, that could create confusion in the record. I don't doubt your careful documentation here, but I think it would be helpful, given that this is what appears to be a summary of the previous parts of the meeting, that commissioners be given the opportunity to ensure alignment and right.
Yeah, I agree. That's why we're discussing the minutes as part of the agenda.
I'm not prepared to do that in real time.
Did staff get a chance to, no.
But I would put the question differently. Why is it that this list of 14 items or whatever I haven't reviewed it, of course, it wasn't in the packet, but I'm so glad that Commissioner Gupta took the effort to write this down. Why was it not, though, in the minutes as a formal attachment? We went through so much scripting and drafting and efforts last month, and I read the minutes wondering whatever happened to the final formal result of all last month's work. So at a minimum, we have this. Let's review it post fact, or, I hope we don't have to wait until next month, but could we please have this as a final formal document once changes are reviewed and approved and all that? In other words, this should have been in the packet.
Well, who knows who knows when you got it to staff?
No, excuse me, I'm not being clear. It was discussed last month at the meeting, and it was not put in minutes. There was no result of it. So in other words, all of the efforts with drafting and fine formulation and all that a month ago were just left in the ether had Utsoff not taken the effort to write it down. So again, thank you for writing it down.
I guess my commentary would be to go back to staff and say, is this consistent with what you heard? The minutes, are not, to my mind, sufficient, because I've got inaudible and this sort of thing. This is what Commissioner Gupta did is very clear and laid out very well. What I'd like to hear from staff, I'm not going to go back. Maybe I'm not a very good commissioner. I'm not going to go back and listen to tape and go minute by minute, but I'd love to hear from staff and say, yes, this is what we heard and what we are planning to do or have done vis-a-vis, or no, it differs in the following way. Is there, I'd ask the chair if there's a process by which we could do that.
No, that was the process I was going to suggest. I was actually going to suggest that we don't vote on the minutes tonight, that we ask staff to review and, redraft the minutes, basically, if there's things after looking at the tape. And if they disagree with it, talk to Commissioner Gupta and see if we can get this resolved. Is that acceptable to you, Commissioner Gupta?
Yeah, that sounds like a great plan. Thank you.
All right.
Can I ask a different question?
Sure.
Which is, isn't the work plan the outcome of this process? And when do we see that? Or would that be the better outcome?
And perhaps even a substitute for this, right? Because we have a documented final work plan product. If that was linked in the minutes, that might be a really helpful way to summarize that.
Are you ready for staff to interject, or are you still discussing?
I'll let Commissioner Metz
Well,
speak and then we'll. talk
Yeah,
about-
I agree with Commissioner Tucker. I was expecting to see the work plan, at least a digest of what we discussed in the minutes from the last meeting. I did review this list fairly quickly. I thought it was actually a pretty accurate rendition of what I remembered from the meeting. But it seems like there are two things. One is writing down what we did and what the minutes were, and I think something like this is needed. And then we also need the work plan, a detailed work plan for what we're doing. I think they're kind of two separate things. I don't think we should ditch this in favor of writing down the work plan. I think we need both, just to, as a history of what we did.
Staff, you want to respond?
Sure. So a couple things. First, thanks Commissioner Gupta for pulling the summary together. It's helpful to have that perspective and have the concise thoughts and feedback so that we can make sure that we are accurately aligning staff's interpretation of things. We have not reviewed this as of yet, but are happy to do so. A summary like this is not the intention of what minutes are for in terms of what would be presented for your approval. This would be something separate, like the commission has identified, like a revised work plan. Staff are in the process of working on a revised work plan. May I remind the commission, there is a process to get stuff done. So once a commission meeting is over, to get something on the next commission meeting, staff really have less than 2 weeks to prepare the material before review, posting, and all of that other work needs to happen. So we are in the process of finalizing the work plan. We're just not able to turn it around in that quick of a time. And we also have a packed agenda. So there were already items for the commission's review this month, and there was not space on your agenda to add an additional item. So staff is planning on finishing the work plan, obviously, and we'll be bringing it ultimately to council for review and adoption. And we can take all of the council's the commission's feedback and update the minutes. Thank you.
Okay.
Then in your view, how might we then have seen the final formal document? It sounds like you would take it to council, then after that you bring it back to us. It probably would not be on the agenda, but how would we have seen the result of all last month's work?
We would inform so a couple options. If the commission wishes for staff to bring the work plan back to you for review for a second round, the revised version, we could as an agenda item on there. If the commission does not and feels that the information was sufficient, which I think staff feels confident in the outcome since the commission spent so much time working through it, we can craft that. We would transmit it to council as a consent item, and we would inform the commission, of course, of the item, send you a copy of it, and once the agenda went out.
All right. So we'll move on from the minutes and you'll come put that back on the agenda after you've worked with
Absolutely.
Commissioner Gupta. Utilities Director's Report. Sorry.
Okay, good evening, everybody. Kylie, I should have introduced myself, apologies. Kylie Nivze, Assistant City Manager. All right, we actually have a fair bit of comments, but since you have a packed agenda, I'm gonna do my best to move through them briefly. Council updates. The council is in the midst of budget season. So if I'm lost with words, it's because we've been in a finance committee meeting since 9 o'clock this morning, working on actually going through the utilities budget. We've been going department by department. The council is going to have a study session on Monday to check in with the finance committee members, see how things are going, policy calls and decisions. And then the budget process will continue, frankly, all the way up through adoption on June 16th. So we'll keep you posted as we move through that. Council also did adopt their priorities. So on Monday night, they did finally adopt their 2025 priorities and objectives on their consent calendar. So you can see a full list of all of those projects. Lastly, there were 2 quick consent items for routine business with the utility that were on consent. One for trenching and work associated with the Foothills fire mitigation, right? The undergrounding that's going on, as well as grid mod. And then the other one was for a printing and mailing services for our utility bills. Okay, on the policy side. So NCPA and NWPPA Federal Policy Conference occurred last week. Yeah, and Vice Mayor Vicky Vinker, as well as our Chief Operating Officer, Alan Kurtori, went to work on lots of legislation and advocacy work on behalf of the city of Palo Alto, as well as the NCPA, which represents us for electricity. So lots of people were met with, regulators, commissioners, representatives from all kinds of agencies. And I think generally staff found it to be a really fruitful time, especially given all the uncertainty going on in Washington right now. Recruitment update. I don't know if you've noticed, but there's a new individual in the audience. Terry Crowley is joining us. He is our new Assistant Director over electric operations and engineering. So Terry is a 27-year veteran leading public utilities. He joins us from the city of Healdsburg and served as the utility director for the city's electric, water, and wastewater department for the last 14 years there. Previously, he held positions with the city of Reading as well as PG&E. So he really brings a wealth of experience, and we are frankly thrilled to have him join us.
Welcome, Terry. It's great to have you.
The commission discussed you heard public comment from one of our public speakers about the SFPUC One Water plan and letter. So I just wanted to confirm for folks, the Councilmember Greer Stone, our Bosco representative, did submit that letter to SFPUC. And so staff will keep everybody posted on any outgrowth from that. I'm sorry, mic, Commissioner? Could you please use your mic, Commissioner?
Has there been a response?
Not to my knowledge.
Because it's been a few weeks now, right?
Copy of the letter?
Can someone also mute the member of the public? That'd be awesome. And I don't know the exact timing. I would need to go back and look. Another update on the $16.5 million federal grant. We told you before we were reviewing T's and C's. We're done with that and we are signing the agreement. So really excited that that project is moving forward. Another exciting point, wow, this is a really long list, but also kind of important. So Palo Alto Utilities was recently elected to the CMUA Board of Governors. So we will now actually be represented at CMUA. CMUA, for the public and commissioners, advocates for the interests of 84 public-owned utilities who provide water service to 75% of Californians and electric service capacity to 25% of the state. So it's really great to have a position on that important organization. Okay, there are some upcoming events that can be found. I'm not going to go through them all in the interest of time at paloalto.gov/workshops. These are everything from how to save money with your EV savings campaign, affordable housing fair, an e-bike and e-scooter expo, and all of those fun things. So please check that out to engage with different events in the community. If I could have the team help me share the slides. Thank you. Just a couple items. All right. So, new electric transmission corridor. We've often talked about wanting a secondary transmission corridor for our electric utility. In fact, I think that came up as one of the items as the work plan, specifically with Stanford. Progress moves forward on building a new transmission line to improve our reliability and capacity and redundancy. Actually, CAISO, Board of Governors, will consider approval of a new 112 kilowatt transmission line from the NASA Ames in Mountain View to Palo Alto. So this is a pretty momentous occasion as we continue to try and have been working on this for, I think, decades at this point. And the project's expected to be somewhere between $40 to $80 million. Not quite sure, obviously, we've got to go through design. But it will be funded through transmission access charges, which are assessed to electric utilities through the state. And PG&E will be the one who builds the new line. The city won't be the one building it. So we likely don't expect it to be in service until 2034, but that's how long these projects take. And I just want to thank utility staff, Lena Perkins, Mohammed Fatah, for their hard work to bring this to fruition. Also really want to express appreciation for CAISO, PG&E, as well as consultants for recommending this project as the most cost-effective way to enhance that reliability. So you can see the details, obviously, of where it would look and go on the slide. Next slide, please. Customer engagement on utility rates, just a fun photo. We've been in the community doing outreach about utility rates, downtown business associations, facility managers, and you can see a fun credit, water saving, energy and water savings credit for the Westin Hotel. Lastly, the UAC, there were action items that were identified at our last meeting. So here's just a quick status of those topics and where they're at. Some of are in progress, some are to be scheduled, but just to give you a snapshot of where we're at. With that, I conclude my comments.
Thank you very much. Any questions for? All right. Yes, go ahead.
Hi, the news of the second or the new transmission line is exciting. Is this sudden? I mean, we talked just last month about, and in prior months when it came to our R&R, we've talked a lot about the question of a future additional from the south transmission line. So have I been sleeping, or it catches me by surprise? Also, the word proposed on the slide, is this a done deal and final?
It is not a done deal. I'll turn it over to Chief Operating Officer Kuraturi in a moment, but I will say our Chief Operating Officer, when we were talking about this work plan, did allude to the staff was working on this. So we have talked about it, but obviously we haven't done necessarily a formal staff report.
So just
Chief Operating Officer?
If I could just clarify my comments. One, I would have expected this to be a more, if it's really as far along as it appears, which is wonderful, I would expect it to have been more prominent in past discussions as recently as a month ago, let alone in our R&R discussions 2 or 3 months ago. I'd like to please to understand the meaning of proposed, and I'd like to ask, please, the funding of it, you said it's funded through, I didn't quite understand what impact that will have on our P&L and our future rate base. Thank you.
Good evening, Alan Kuraturi, Chief Operating Officer. So as we alluded to before, and has gone to City Council in the past, we were working very diligently with Stanford to try to get a second connection through there. And after that, I think it was in 2019, we actually pivoted to work on CAISO connection. So since that time, we've been working through the CAISO process in terms of the transmission planning, in terms of our load projections and submitting those. So as part of that process, this alignment and alternatives have been discussed. So it does take a long period of time to have those discussions that to make those recommendations and get it into their work plan. So it was published as part of their work plan. I think I alluded to that in one of the previous meetings. And now we have it actually calendared for their consideration for approval. So for CAISO's consideration. So they would be the governing agency at the state to in short, green light the project for approval. So there's a series of steps to have that achieved. We have to submit our load projections to the California Energy Commission. They work up alternatives to meet those objectives because, in terms of some of the limitations of the system, and then CAISO approves the project. So there's a series of alternatives that are discussed, and we are very fortunate to get our project included as quickly as it has. So we are working in real time with that and very pleased with that outcome. Your other question?
Commissioner, please use your mic.
You mentioned Stanford, and I think in the minutes from last month, this whole question of Stanford as an option, it was a secondary topic at best, but it was in the minutes. Does this suggest that we're not going with some sort of Stanford partnership approach? I didn't quite get the dichotomy or the choice there.
Sure. So, I mean, ultimately, we could build many connections, but this does alleviate one of our core resiliency concerns of not having two transmission lines. The discussion last month, to your point, was about having discussions with Stanford as part of the UAC's work plan. The to-do that the UAC gave me was to, instead of including that in the work plan, was to let Stanford know that we would be interested. I can confirm I have done so. And so they said, thank you for your interest, and we'll let our folks know.
That this goes in a decidedly different direction, right? I mean, this is not working with Stanford or,
Correct,
okay.
but it
got
doesn't mean they're mutually exclusive.
Got it. Okay, thank,
So as part of this work, so your secondary question was, how is this funded? How does this affect our budget? So CAISO's projects on transmission are put in what they call the transmission access charges. So a project would be incorporated, it would be improved, and those costs would be allocated throughout the state in terms of CAISO's service territory. So we would be one of those payers for that, as well as other customers that have projects in CAISO. So for example, if there was another transmission project in the CAISO service territory that was low voltage, which this is, we would be paying part of that transmission cost as well. So we are paying part of this cost, and other customers throughout the state are paying this cost as well.
did I hear 80 million? So this would be an $80 million proposition?
No, it costs the city nothing.
So it costs CAISO, so there's a cost estimate as part of the CAISO project between $42 and $84 million is the typical type of range as a budgetary range. That is not a cost that's going to be 100% attributable to Palo Alto. We pay tech charges based on the amount of energy we use, and we pull from CAISO on low voltage.
Thank you.
Go ahead. Sure, absolutely.
I just had a question on the public hearing. I received this in the mail today, the notice of a public hearing on the water and wastewater rates. And I was just curious, why just those rates? Is it because the increases are higher than the others? Or if you could just give some background.
So water and wastewater rates follow under Prop 218. So those are being noticed. So those are provided annually to the customers. You are able to do a vote of a protest. They count at the meeting. If they get 50% plus one, then the rate does not pass. It is a requirement for utilities, all utilities, to send those out to the customers, whether they're public utilities or not. So that's what happens. The electric utility is not a part of Prop 218, so that's why you don't see it there.
Thanks.
Any other questions? All right.
Oh, I had just a quick comment.
Go ahead.
I just wanted to celebrate with staff the second electric transmission connection. That's huge, momentous, as you've described. And I also wanted to thank staff for including the table of action items. It was very helpful. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, seeing nothing else, we'll move to a new business, which is approval of the chair and vice chair to serve a short term of May 7th, 2025 through April 1st, 2026. Do we have any motions for chair?
I would like to move to nominate Commissioner Scharf for a continued second term as the chair of the Utilities Commission.
I'll second that.
Thank you. Any other nominations? All right, seeing none, do you want to just call the roll?
Commissioner Gupta,
Yes.
Commissioner Metz,
Yes.
Commissioner Croft,
Yes.
Chair Sharp,
Yes.
Vice Chair Mater,
Yes.
Commissioner Tucker,
Yes.
Commissioner Phillips,
Yes.
motion carries 7-0.
I just wanted to thank you all for that. I really appreciate the confidence. Now we'll move to vice chair. Any motions for a vice chair? I'll move Megan, Commissioner Maurer.
I'll second.
Any other nominations? Seeing none, you want to call the roll?
Commissioner Gupta,
Yes.
Commissioner Metz,
Yes.
Commissioner Croft,
Yes.
Chair Sharp,
Yes.
Vice Chair Mater,
Abstain?
Commissioner Tucker,
Yes.
Commissioner Phillips,
Yes.
motion carries 6-0 with one abstain.
That's correct. All right, moving on to the next item, which is the utilities advisory.
Sorry, may I ask a question about the term?
Yes.
Since we discussed it the last meeting, and I just checked the website to ensure that this is correct, but I think everyone's term ends on March 30th these days. And so can we have the term that you guys are being elected to go 1 month later so that it would be, 1 year from now, not 1 year on April 1st, which I think is the proposed term, so that we have any new commissioners seated?
I would second that. Do you want to take a vote on that then? So your vote is to go 1 month later, and I think we need to correct this because it actually says May 7th, 2025 through April 1st. Oh, it does say 2026. I was reading it wrong. So it would be,
What is the motion?
the motion would be May 7th, 2025 through May, right? First?
Right, like May 1st. I guess
Because-
May 1st would be the right time.
Well, you can explain your motion.
Yes, so my motion, the reason for it is we were going to vote on this last month, but two of us were termed out already and everyone's term pretty much ends on the 30th. So it was just to move it one month later, to have the term end 1 month later.
I agree. I just
Okay.
wanted to make sure I understood what the motion was.
All right, you want to call the roll?
Commissioner Gupta,
Yes.
Commissioner Metz,
Yes.
Commissioner Croft,
Yes.
Chair Scharf,
Yes.
Vice Chair Mater,
Yes.
Commissioner Tucker,
Yes.
Commissioner Phillips,
Yes.
motion carries 7-0.
All right. Sure.
Quick question before we leave this topic. There were two openings on the commission that council reviewed or interviewed. From whom do we get the results of council's decision? I infer that incumbents
They were
are
reappointed.
reappointed.
People that showed up.
Okay,
That's why they're here.
it makes sense. I'm happy it happened. I'm surprised at our quote communication.
All right. Moving on to the next item, Utilities Advisory Commission Finance Subcommittee recommends, the commission recommends city council approval of the FY 2026 fiber rates and packages.
Chair, actually,
Yes.
public comment on that item?
Oh,
Thank you.
public comment. Yes, I did forget the public comment. Are you commenting on the previous item? Is that correct?
Correct. I would just like to ask all members of the commission if they could please use the mics. My name is Sierra Peterson. I'm a member of the public. I'm usually joining you remotely. I sit on several of the Palo Alto Commission meetings. I'm a renter here in Palo Alto, very active and very committed. It is so hard to hear you all of the time. If you could all please use your mics. It is critical for not only public access, but also for those of us who don't need public access. So please use your mics and sit into your mics. It would be really appreciated. Thank you. That's all.
Thank you, Ms. Peterson. I'm going to try and police that. Okay, if I see the mics, it'd be great if the rest of you did as well.
I will state for the record, I did not ask her to do that.
All right. Now for the Utilities Advisory Commission Finance Subcommittee item. Who was on the subcommittee, just so I recall, was Phil, Rachel, and Utsav. Which one?
Did we vote on the term change?
We did.
Ending date?
We did vote on these, didn't we? Yes, we did.
Mike's, guys.
We did. Yes, Mike's. All right. Which one of you would like to tell us? Rachel.
I will summarize for you. So we have actually discussed the fiber rates, not only at the last meeting, but at prior meetings as well. So we've had quite a bit of time to hear about what is planned. The budget, on the other hand, was on the agenda, but we received it the day before and we didn't have comprehensive time to discuss it. So we'll just give an update on the fiber. We reviewed, we're going to see many slides that are similar to what we reviewed in the meeting, but I'd say we probably had a little bit more detail since we had multiple meetings. We reviewed current internet availability in the pilot neighborhood, pricing and promotions of those companies that are there. At the time, CPAU was not sure if the map showed penetration of the providers, as in who's taking what option versus availability of the provider. So hopefully that'll be in the summary today, but it was a little bit hard to understand what market we're going into without knowing that. We do know that the market is competitive with AT&T and Comcast both already providing 1 gig plus service. And converting, we discussed that converting AT&T fiber might be difficult just because installing fiber is time consuming, and the differences between what we're going to offer and what is already offered might not be viewed so greatly. Whereas with Comcast, we think we would have a greater chance, or the city does think we'd have a better chance to possibly convert people, but it would require people to cut the cord with cable TV. So we're very excited, and this pilot is an opportunity to learn about customers' current internet service, how we compare against them, what are the decision factors for customers to convert, what marketing works, and we just really need to make sure that that data is collected in an organized way so that we can make some decisions. We did agree with the rates that were presented. I mean, they're going to show us various rates that and how they kind of lead into the financials, but there are key metrics, rates of course, take rates of course, cost to install, whether it turns out to be what we think it's going to be, and those will feed into the business model, which we also got a chance to see, but that is not in the slides. And I think we've seen it a couple times in our meetings, but the full UAC has not had the benefit of seeing that. So just as a summary, I'd say we all three of us supported the rates that were recommended by the staff for the pilot. What is presented in the slides are maximum rates. We did discuss more discrete rates, and we'll see how that discussion plays out in this meeting. One other point is that having seen the business model, it's clear that it's a very expensive build out. 90 million in debt is assumed to be taken to finance the build out. And the date at which it turns, positive, net income positive is like 9 or 10 years out. So at least two out of the three of us felt very strongly that we want an opportunity to review the results of the pilot to understand how well we're doing prior to making decisions on phase 1. And so because the investment really is, as a finance committee, investment is significant, the debt is significant, we don't want to not hit our metrics and not be able to have a healthy finance model. So that was just one of the 2 out of 3 of us request, is that we stand firm in asking to see the results of the pilot prior to making decisions on whether we recommend phase 1.
Okay, so I think what I'd like to do is staff goes next, and we'd come back to you, Rachel, and I'd like you to make the motion that reflects the majority opinion on the subcommittee. Yes, is there public comment? Let's do the public. Well, let's do the public comment after staff does their presentation.
All right. Good evening, commissioners, and congratulations on your reappointment, Chair Scharf and Vice Chair Mater. Welcome, Mayor Flowing. I'm Dave Yen, Utility Strategic Business Manager. I also want to announce that Darren Namoto will be joining us tonight from afar. He's on vacation, but he made the time to join us, so he will be chiming in once in a while. So thank you, Darren. He is the interim Assistant Director of Fiber. So tonight I will provide an update of the Fiber to the Premise project and the proposed fiber rates and offerings. Next slide. We will provide a brief overview of the council approved projects. We will share the results of a competitive scan of the pilot area performed by the consultant. We will also like to get UAC's input on the financials, product offerings, and marketing strategy. Then we'll wrap it up with measures of success for the pilot and also for phase 1 and also upcoming key milestones. So the purpose of tonight's discussion is how do we promote and successfully deploy fiber to the premise in the pilot area. We do not want to reopen discussion on whether or not the city should be entering a competitive ISP market. These three projects have been approved by council, which staff is working on to deliver. The first one is the fiber backbone rebuild. The existing backbone is about 30 years old and has served the city well and has built up over $30 million in reserves from dark fiber licensing. It's time to reinvest in a new fiber backbone that will provide additional capacity for current and future needs. Council also approved up to 20 million from the fiber reserves for phase one of fiber to the premise. The pilot is a subset of the phase one, consisting of about 1,000 residents. And as we build out into phase one, we're expecting another 5,000 or a total of 6,000 residents in all. After we complete the pilot and as we expand into phase one, we will return back to the UAC and council with data points, financials, and metrics to measure the success and financial sustainability of this new business. We're also aligning fiber to the premise with GridMod to increase efficiency, reduce construction costs, and minimize disruption in neighborhoods. As we replace poles and add transformers, we're also hanging messenger lines on those poles, so we don't have to go back in the same neighborhood and we'll mobilize a second crew. Next slide. This is a coverage map that shows where Xfinity and AT&T are providing internet in the pilot area. The red dots represent Xfinity's 2 gigabit service, and the blue dots represent where AT&T is offering their fiber service. So based on the map, Xfinity has about 50% penetration, or they're only able to offer 2 gig service in about 50% of the area, whereas AT&T is able to offer fiber service to about 90% of that pilot area. Any questions on that one?
Do we have knowledge of who has what in that area?
We do not know exactly who. This is
Okay.
just what's available to the customers.
Got it. Thank you.
So the red ones are 2 gigabit services or more, and the blue dots are AT&T fiber.
We can, I mean, basically what this says is that AT&T with blue dots with 2 gigs is everywhere in the zone. And roughly 90-something%, I assume. And that Comcast Xfinity, although it is the market share leader in all of Palo Alto, I think, correct me, is only, I don't know, 50-60% of the homes in the zone. Is that roughly the message?
Based on the study, they said it's about 50-50 split between the two incumbents in that area.
In the zone,
Yeah.
50-50. Oh, so where it's red, it's not, there's no blue?
In the red, there is blue, it's underneath it. It's kind
Yeah.
of buried underneath. You
Okay,
can't see
so,
it. The blue is mostly everywhere.
okay, again, the blue is mostly everywhere. The red is 50% roughly. And how does fiber compare in delivery down and up to 2 gigabits down at least?
So Xfinity doesn't have a symmetrical speed, so that's your up speed and down speed being equal. Fiber does allow symmetrical speed, so when we say 1 gig, you can upload 1 gig up and also download
When
1
you
gig
say
down.
fiber, do you mean 1 gig?
Fiber means it's symmetrical speed
So it can go up to
to 5
10
or 10
gig.
gigs if you have the
Thank
right equipment, yeah. So whereas
Okay.
Comcast or Xfinity can only, let's say if they say 2 gigs, they can download up to 2 gigs, but when you upload, it's probably less than that, substantially less, maybe 300 megs, maybe. I don't know the exact
This
number.
chart suggests Xfinity does not market anything much above 1.2.
Right, or 2 gigs. They do have a 2 gig service, but nothing past 2 gigs. But they need different equipment to increase the speed. But again, it's not symmetrical like AT&T fiber and also Palo Alto fiber.
Is it fair to say, though, that 1.2 gigs is offered in that entire area from
Yes.
Xfinity?
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
And for that 1.2 gigs, what we heard is that they don't usually upgrade that area because it's too costly for them. So they'll just leave it at that same level of speed. Next slide, please. So this slide shows the promotional and the standard rates for both the incumbents. For example, in the 1 gig service, you see they'll offer at $55 as a promotional rate to entice other customers to switch over. And then eventually for AT&T, their fixed rate will be $80. And then for Xfinity or Comcast, it'll be $114 a month. So it'll start you at a lower rate to entice you to come over, but then eventually they will raise you up to that standard rate, which is 80 and 114. They're also offering gift cards to try to entice you as well. the city will not be competing with incumbents with promotional prices because we don't have those deep pockets. We will differentiate ourselves by speed, reliability, transparent pricing with no hidden fees, responsiveness, and exceptional customer service, similar to our other utilities and our city services. Any questions on this slide? Okay. And this is the CapEx for the pilot right now. It's roughly about $5 million. The first three is the labor portion of it. So like I mentioned earlier, as we're doing grid mod, we're having the construction crew VIP power line also install the messenger, which will let us lash the fiber onto it later. And then we'll also have another different crew coming in to do the overhead and underground construction. So one thing I want to note here is that the overhead construction is much less expensive than underground. So for overhead, we're doing 37,000 feet at 500 or 600,000, let's say. Whereas we're doing underground for only 2,400 feet, we're paying almost half the price. So I think one of the council's motions when they approved the phase build out was to try to pass as many homes as we can during the phase one. So I think we're going to be focusing mostly on the aerial areas, just because that's we get the biggest bang for our buck, I guess you would say, the most cost effective. It also makes sense to align it with grid mod, which is also what they're focusing on in the first phase. So we're just going to follow grid mod along the way to help find efficiencies, cost savings, and also minimize the disruption there. And then we also have costs for the materials. And then the hut has been built. It's all, I think it's in Iowa or Indiana, but we're just not ready to receive it yet. We still need to build the pad mount up by the power station, Colorado. That's where it'll be located. It's still going through the permitting review right now. We're still getting a planning permit and a building permit approved before we can start the construction on the pad mount. So we're hoping the pad mounts will get done, or at least the permits will be approved by end of this month. And then there's capital costs for the electronics for the data center and the equipment in the hut. And so the total cost right now is about $4.5 million, including a contingency of 10%, about $400,000. And if we go by one of the key metrics is the cost per passing per home, including the CapEx, it's about $5,500 per home right now. But once we exclude the one-time cost, it's around $2,200. And our goal is to get down to like $1,500. I think that is the industry standard. So I think we are learning from this pilot, and we think we could get lower prices in the next phase. Any question on this slide?
Is this over a 1-year time, like the labor cost, or what's the time frame?
The labor has not started yet. Well, the first one has happened already for the VIP. So that one's been done already. The fiber overhead and underground construction will probably begin in the summer when the hut is built out.
So I think, Dave, what the commissioner is asking is the total cost column, is that intended to reflect a 12-month period of time, the entire build-out phase?
The entire build-out phase for the pilot.
So it's a multi-year number.
Yeah, well, construction alone is probably going to take 3 months to build. So that's a 3 months timeline.
Thank you.
Okay, next slide. And here is the operating expense we're assuming in the model right now. So we are going pretty lean. We were authorized 4 FTEs, but we are using a lot of in-house staff to help contribute to this project. So we have budgeted like 2 full-time managers. We have hired the outside plant manager, and we are looking for a fiber systems or operations manager down the road. But right now with Darren and his team and our utility staff, we're picking up a lot of those work ourselves, at least for the pilot area. Once we expand into phase 1, we might need more internal resources. But for now, we are able to manage the workload. Other areas of expenses will be like customer support, help desk. So if there's an outage, they can call this 24/7 center to get help with. Also costs for Equinix to connect to the data center. And then also the installation drops and so forth, I guess. We also have costs broken out by subscribers. So you can see on the far right column, we have a fee per subscriber. That's what we're estimating for every subscriber. So for every installation, it's about $200 extra installation operation expense for us. And for like sales and marketing, what we've heard is about $500 to acquire a customer. And even for the equipment, it's about $400 a person. So these costs are built into the model. Any questions on the operating side?
So these are on top of the costs presented on the previous slide.
Correct. Those were the capital expenses and these are the operating. So the 20 million we've been authorized is for both. And just to, I think someone mentioned it was bond finance, that $20 million is from the fiber reserves. So we are bond financing anything right now. So. Next slide.
Is fiber reserve the same as when we say fiber fund? Are those same
Yes.
thing?
Yeah. Previously, the fiber fund was dedicated just to the dark fiber business, but now we're also adding the ISP business. All right, so this is where we want to get your input on. These are the proposed rates and offerings. What we try to do is kind of mimic what our competition is providing. And we kind of, for the up to range is because we want flexibility and pricing when we go out in the market. These prices, up to prices are competitive with what they're listing as well. So, and then on the comment side is kind of what is expected when we start offering these. For the 1 gig service and less, it will be free installation and free routers. But as you get to the higher speeds, we will be charging for the routers just because it is more expensive than the 1 gig routers. So we do need to recover some of those costs.
Sorry.
Sure.
Why does it cost more to provide 1 gig versus 2 gig versus 5 gigs on fiber?
It's a different equipment for the house equipment. So it's a different modem or router. So those routers cost more money for the higher speeds.
But does it cost, I mean, there's a difference between providing a 1 gig service at $95 and then 2 gigs is $175, and that's monthly. So if people sign up for a year, is the difference really just the cost of the router? That's
Sorry.
a big difference, right? I mean, it's.
No, so ultimately, fiber is a little bit different than our other rates that we've talked about a lot with the commission. So there isn't necessarily strict regulations like a COSA that
No,
we've
I understand.
experienced. So these rates are reflective, I think, of both market sensitivity analysis and price competitiveness, while also recognizing the need to do our best to offset the costs and manage. So it's not a direct correlation between, say, 1 and 2 is specifically the equipment. It's a combined impact of everything from recovering costs to deliver the service, as well as what the market can bear.
Good evening, this is Darren. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes, Darren.
Yeah, so I think where you're going to is what's the cost of adding or providing their transport for people that are ordering the 1 gig versus 5 gig versus 10 gig. So it is all about the path to the internet, and we have the ability to scale up and scale down, but it's really at an oversubscription rate and really what usage of data is, and based on learning from others, we should be fine. So it's really the bandwidth that a household or a customer is able to use. So if we do sell a 2 gig, we're assuming that they're not going to be using that full 2 gig or 2.5 gigs continuously, right? There's going to be peaks and valleys. So our transport cost is able to help absorb that, if that helps.
So that does help a lot. So I guess my question is this is, if I'm in the pilot, I have to say 2 things to myself. One, it's going to cost me money to switch over because I get rid of my other service. You guys, we may go away at the end of the pilot and I'd have to switch back, right? I mean, why? And it's now more expensive at 1 gig. It's $80 with, and I realize it goes up to, and that's the difference. You're going to try and make that argument. Hey, we're $95. We're not $80. We're not 114, but, and that's your argument. I guess my question is, you would be so much more competitive if you said 2 gigs for $100. People would be like, wow, that's a real, and if we can compete on the gigs, why wouldn't we do that?
So we did run some numbers with the lower prices. It's just that would take us a lot longer to get break even at the operational side. We wouldn't even be able to expand phase 1 much further if we were, or even start phase 1 if we were to charge those much lower rates. I guess. We'll show that later.
So I guess I'm confused because you'll show it later, I'll get to it. But don't most people choose the 1 gig,
Yes,
right? And so if you told people they were getting 2 gigs, you probably don't lose that much money because 80%, I'm making this up.
Mhm.
80% of the people choose 1 gig. Everyone I know chooses 1 gig. But if you could get 2 gigs for a little more, like the $95, then everyone would be like, wow, I'm getting something, even if they're not using it.
Mhm.
And
And-
so you'd be so much more competitive. Whereas right now, I see Comcast and AT&T being like, here's a gift card, here's an introductory price of $50, here's this. And you're coming in and saying $95. And I just want you to think about that as if I was coming in doing this market, I would give it 2 gigs for $100, whatever. And they'd be like, that's completely different. That's so much better.
yes, thank you.
And if I can just address that as well, and that's why these are our starting prices. Again, once you get to market, we're going to have to evaluate and do our marketing strategy to see what the market will allow us to go. But again, to Dave's point, we do need to make sure we are able to recover costs at some point. So that's why we're asking for a range of different options and products and services. And, besides the technical aspects, the hopes is that we can sell them on the same level of service that they've come accustomed to with utilities. We are local, so if they have a problem, we're going to be there immediately. We have staff on site if there's a problem in their home that, we can schedule people to be on site more readily than some of the other competitors. So really focusing on the service delivery aspects and the customer support, as well as providing services to the entire community of Palo Alto, right? Not cherry picking. And in the end, the hopes is we can deliver services to the entire community in Palo Alto and not cherry pick just the easy to build places, which the current providers are doing.
To add to Chair Sharp's question about 1 gig versus 2 gig, why we pick 1, I think the device for the 2 gig is about more than 50% more expensive than 1 gig home equipment.
What's the difference? What does it cost? Are we talking an extra $100 or are we talking?
About 150 more additional for that device. Yeah.
All right, go on.
Actually, I'll make a couple comments. One, in the discussions, just note that these are maximums. They're not the rates. They need the flexibility to adjust the rates, particularly if AT&T and Comcast. So if they did what, Chair Scharf recommended and lowered it to 100, if AT&T lowered it to 100, which they might well do, that would be interesting learning, but might want to adjust again. And I think we want to think strategically, what do we want to get out of this? I mean, we kind of know if we price low, we can get more people, no question. I mean, I believe that. But what does it take? I think the question to me is there a sustainable business in this for the city of Palo Alto as the third entrant into this market? And that's a much harder question to answer. And I'm personally skeptical about the answer, but I'm not, that's not the pilot and phase 1 are fait accompli. They've been approved by council, as I understand. So, the question is, what can we price that helps us learn, from my point of view, is there a potentially stable business here?
No, I totally
for the
agree with
city.
you. And I really appreciate all the work. We'll get to that. Why don't we continue and then?
Sure. And then some of these offerings, we are listing it here just to get council's approval in advance. Some of these we won't be offering until like the phase 1, but at least we have it ready. I think we want to be agile, I guess. We'll offer some of these other products or change the different speeds. But I think for the pilot, we're just looking at 1 gig and 5 gig. Next slide. And then based on our other equipment that we have, we do have these other service offerings that we provide, like smart home, smart biz, more parental controls, and so forth here. So these are other features that our equipment can provide, something we might offer in the future as well. But we want to get pre-approval, so we're able to launch them when they're ready. And the other contract terms we have, we don't have any data allowance caps or anything, and the contracts will be month to month. So a customer doesn't have to pre-sign up for X number of months. Oh, go ahead, Commissioner Metz.
Yeah, I just want to make a couple of comments on the rates before you move on. First of all, my suggestion was just drop the 500 megabit rate and just make it, since mostly people are gonna want 1 gig or 2. Second, I would make the parental controls and the intrusion protection part of the basic offering and not make that an extra charge. I mean, especially the parental control seems kind of hygienic, part of the thing. I have one question which can answer now or later, which is what's the plan for penetrating multifamily? It seems like that's pretty important since we think that it's kind of captive, at the same time, it's also probably lower cost to serve. So, what's the plan for going after that?
Yeah, you're absolutely correct on multifamily. They are very difficult. Some of them already have exclusive agreements with some of the incumbents already. And to go in there, it's pretty costly usually because you have to rewire the entire house and so forth. So we would have to do a cost benefit analysis, make sure we get a right of entry, and then work with the property owner. But we are looking for the new greenfield MDUs. So as those get built out, we are trying to make contacts with them and ask them to add a third conduit in there. So at least we'll be a third provider for them, a third option for those new residents. So we're more focused on the greenfield MDUs.
I had a comment in the discussion. I agree, Chair Scharf, with, I think switching is hard for people. And so my concern is that how do we convince someone to switch, especially when they've got something fast already? And so I do think the idea of offering faster speeds at lower price, or we talked about, or one of the suggestions I had is maybe combining some of these additional features in order, we need to create some incentive to switch somehow. And that is, I think we have some things here we could offer. So I would love to see some creativity on how to build compelling offerings that get people to move.
Yes, the goal of this rates proposal is to give us flexibility to group certain things together, like Commissioner Metzing offering the parental control, bundling it in, offering even a free month of service or 2. So we have that flexibility with this.
So I'm just going to follow up on what Commissioner Croft said. My concern is not the rates, really. My concern is more that, I don't know how to put this, that we're taking a regular utility approach to what is a competitive business. When I heard you say that you want to be able to offer to everyone in the city, even if it's not cost effective and they cherry pick, I panicked. I said, that's a utility approach, not a business approach. And what I would really suggest you do is focus on how you make the pilot successful before you worry, which means getting a bunch of people to switch. Because if a bunch of people don't switch, and I understand, Bob's concern over there, but if you don't make the pilot and get a bunch of people, you then need to build a sustainable business from showing that.
Mhm.
And to me, that means you need to basically give people a strong reason to switch. And I don't know what that is, and I think that that's what you need to focus on. It's the marketing. It's how do we get them to switch?
And I ultimately think, thank you, Chair Scharf, that's kind of spot on. That is what's necessary, and that is a component of what we hope to be moving forward with the UAC, as well as ultimately the broader community as we try and actually launch. What you're actually seeing before you, and in all honesty, I think we've had a lot of discussions internally whether or not we should bring this forward yet in advance of that, and what you've identified. And, where we've been struggling is moving at the pace of business versus moving through our necessary approvals and review processes. And so really, staff is bringing this forward now so that, frankly, we have a schedule that should we be able to do any alpha or beta testing or things like that, that we actually have the authority to do so. And I fully expect when we get into a position beyond this kind of this initial build out. I'm not trying to figure out the right words, that we would and we need to figure out exactly what you said. What is that marketing strategy? How do you get people to switch? And once we can in theory, physically light them as a customer, like how do you get them to buy in? So I do, just to share the struggle that staff has been kind of going through of what's more important, what comes first. This moves through a much more rigorous, rates move through a much more rigorous process. And so that's why this is coming, I think, before we're able to bring forward that full-blown kind of marketing plan.
Go on.
Next slide, please. All right, so this is kind of a pricing model here. So in this model, we're assuming there's no price elasticity of demand. So if the price goes up, still the same number of subscribers. And here we're showing in the first year, we're gonna have about 932 passings. Then we go up to 7,200 passings by 2029. And then also shows how much the take rate's being assumed into this model. So in the beginning, I think our goal is really operational feasibility and technical feasibility, making sure the service we're offering is working at, we think, the internet speeds, and making sure the delivery we're doing is meeting our customers' expectations. So once we get that figured out, we will start targeting more and try to increase the take rate then, and hopefully provide even lower prices as long as we get the right numbers. So here we have three scenarios: low, mid, and high pricing. So again, it's based on that structure you saw earlier, like the low, I think for 1 gig, it was what was it earlier? Sorry. For 1 gig, it was up to $95. So low could be somewhere in the mid point, and then mid-range would be somewhere in the 75th percentile, and then high will be probably the higher end, is kind of how we modeled this. So as you can see, under the low pricing, we don't even break even until the 4th year, assuming we hit 33%. Whereas under the high pricing, we break even in the 3rd year, in 2028. So depending on which level of pricing, that's how soon we get to our break even point. So I guess we want to get input here from the UAC on where you think we should be pricing, and whether or not is the goal to get the highest penetration, or is it financial sustainability, I guess, is kind of what we're looking at. At the low prices, we'll get higher take rates, but then we'll also won't break even sooner, but it's longer to break even.
And to clarify, as it says operational, and we discussed, this is operationally breaking even, it's not paying back any of the capital investment.
That is correct. Thank you for that. This is operational costs only.
And I would like to ask a question because I'm somewhat confused about the difference between pilot and phase 1 and where, so as we've been talking about, it sounds like pilot is 1,000 customers or passes?
Passes.
Okay, and then the phase 1 is 5,000 additional passes.
Right.
And what are the assumed timelines? Because when you showed us the 4.5 million for the pilot, that is going to be spent in what amount of time, and where does that align with these years that you're, like, where is pilot, where is phase 1 on these years? So how do we know what we've invested?
So pilot would be the FY26, which is the 932 passings. So assuming we build into phase 1 right after that, that's when we get the additional 5,900, additional 5,000 passings. So I think that 5 million you saw earlier was for just a pilot.
So this actual 4-year model assumes that we've continued building
Yes.
past that 20 million.
No, not past the 20 million. We're within the 20 million, but for the pilot, we're gonna spend about 5 million in construction, in CapEx, and we'll spend about let's say 2 million in operating expenses. So I think we're budgeting, we'll have another 10 million remaining for CapEx for the next phase if we want to continue building. So that's what the assumption is here.
Okay.
So we're
Maybe-
20.
Maybe put a different way, Commissioner. The pilot is a subset of phase 1. So we're doing the initial 1,000, and then within that initial $20 million budget, we would expand to add the additional 5,000 passings. And that would happen after we get through this first 1,000, basically. So in theory, it's easier for us to build out beyond the first 1,000 pilot because a lot of the infrastructure like the hut and whatnot that's necessary is all part of the pilot. And so ideally, we'd be able to build at a faster pace to move between 1,000 passings and say 6,000 passings.
I think the next slide will show the $20 million breakdown real quick, the cash flow. So
But
we start,
before we go there,
Sure.
again, how many homes are in the phase one map? It sounds like it's roughly 6,000, is that
6,000
right?
total, yes.
6,000.
Mhm.
And we'll think of the word pilot as a subset of that, and none of this has begun. We don't have,
Not yet. We're-
right? I know we'll get to this in a moment, but you have a low price, high price, medium price.
Mhm.
I looked at the slide, of course, and couldn't make head or tail of it without knowing what those prices were. You mentioned $95.
Mhm.
I don't see $95 on the chart. But I mean, if the purpose of this discussion is to get some guidance on pricing, the most important thing is to have clarity on what the price strategy is, what the strategy of the whole project is. When I say project, I mean phase one. And I assume that if we don't price very aggressively, so all this talk about switching is enabled through low pricing. I mean, we have to be lower than what they're currently paying. Otherwise, what's the point? And as far as I can tell, $95 for a gigabit is above, in fact, substantially above the incumbents. I don't see how this would attract enough customers for us to learn anything from a 1 year, 3 year, any length of pilot. So I would assume that when we're talking about, okay, what's our price? Well, then what's our price strategy? And if what's our price strategy, the number one thing needs to be win a bunch of customers in phase one. So we have, even if it costs money, I mean, pilots cost money. It can't be that our objective is to have, I don't know, break even P&L, improve financial viability. That's never the case in a pilot or a phase one. And so right out the gate, I'm kind of unpersuaded from the logic of these pricing figures.
Commissioner, I think that feedback actually is exactly what staff is looking for. So thank you. Like you identified, there's that tension of, are you going after customers or are you going after managing the bottom line? And so I think that is that feedback that we're seeking because, to your point, pilots cost money. And how much are we willing to kind of invest, knowing that either we want to manage our financial risk or we want to manage our kind of, and there's a sweet spot in there, right? It's not one or the other. So again, just want to say thank you, because I think that is actually the feedback we are seeking.
You probably don't want too much of a brainstorming here. Maybe this should be done off-site, but not only will you need a really high penetration, like, I don't know, 30% uptake, but you'll also want to play a lot with the various value add options that you've listed, like parental control, security, all those different things. So make those super easy to add onto so that you can get a number of people to tell you whether it's worth it. I think there was a comment earlier that why go less than a gig or 500 megs? Well, I thought one of the whole strategies or purposes for this discussion is for people who can't afford AT&T. So we probably need low price options, and we need to see whether we can get people who currently can't afford broadband any which way to say yes to our lowest price offer. Ergo, we certainly will need a low price offer. A whole bunch of strategic considerations that we probably ought to align on first before we pick a price number.
Go ahead. Yes.
I just want to echo that last comment in terms of, when you're asking for our value statement, I think that that's a really important thing to underscore. So thank you very much, Commissioner Duker, for making that point. I guess
What was the value statement?
just in terms of making sure that we are serving customers that cannot afford current fiber offerings from AT&T or Comcast or other providers. By providing a range of pricing options.
But only if it makes financial sense in a pilot. I would disagree. I also got to say, have you looked where that pilot is?
Well,
Have you
this is
looked
where
at- I'm not being mean, I'm just
No,
like, this is like one of the
but
richest sections of Palo Alto.
I have to say, that was actually where I was going with this, is like, if that is the value statement, how on earth did we choose this location for our pilot? Which, number one, is incredibly well served by both AT&T and Comcast, and B, doesn't appear to be serving like purpose of a publicly owned utility in which we are spending $20 million of city funds to trickle down on service to this area. Like, with all due respect, I don't understand.
We chose that area was because of the grid mod. We had to do the 412 kV conversion, and so we were just following behind them to learn from the pilot.
But I understand that there may be lower costs, and that may be a wonderful perk much later in the process. But I don't think that that alone is a particularly strong justification for understanding how the rest of the city is going to adopt or not adopt. Because you are choosing an incredibly rarefied segment of the population that, quite frankly, may not be price sensitive at all, right? And number two, you're not exploring the idea that enhanced service is what is going to attract customers. So there seems to be many logical fallacies in serving or in choosing this service area. And I don't presume that you're going to change your mind at this point, but I just am worried that the concept of this being a pilot is in fact, like, we will learn something about these 25 blocks of Palo Alto, but this is not representative of Palo Alto. And if you want to do a pilot, do it in areas that are more likely to be representative of the parts of Palo Alto that are more likely to adopt your fiber utility. Sorry.
I guess this brings up a question which I'd like to ask staff, and I'm glad that Mayor Lowing is here too, because I hear two different points of view. I hear from Chair Scharf, should be a business, and we shouldn't consider we're going to, serve everybody in the city of Palo Alto.
Can I just clarify?
Can I just finish? And, the alternative, and then we should be considering, how do we bring service to people who can't afford it versus, no, this is a hard-nosed business. We're going to try to make money with it. I do think we need to, think that through. I totally agree with Vice Chair Mauder. If we're trying to say, let's serve the underserved, this is a horrible choice. If we're not going to have the utilities obligation to serve, which is built into all our other utilities, that's an interesting point. But I'm not sure, is that consistent with what council believes and what other people believe? I mean, is this just a business that we're going into in competition with two established competitors, or are we trying to serve some social goal?
I think.
Or both?
I think I need to clarify. Obviously, I would like us to be able to serve the social goal. I don't believe we get there if we don't first have a business. This is not a situation where we have a forced, like our electric utility. You don't have a choice. I can't just say to you, I don't like Palo Alto, I'm going to PG&E. Here, we have a choice, right? You can use Comcast, you can use AT&T, and you'll be able to use Palo Alto. And given that, the more you subsidize somebody else, the less profit you'll make, which means that you have to raise the prices on other people. And in a competitive business, that's really hard to do. So I think first what you need to do is you need to have a business, because this discussion just becomes academic. If we do a pilot, we get no uptake, we decide that we're going to, do subsidies or whatever we're going to do for some social goal, we don't have a business. I think you have to prove you have a business, unless we don't care about that first. Because once you have a business, you can then think about how do we, serve the social goal.
I think I disagree. I mean, the idea behind the electric power is that people do subsidize. The people who are difficult to reach, are subsidized by the other customers. That's the point.
Because they have no choice.
Because but that's the obligation to serve, and you're guaranteed a monopoly. I mean, that's the idea of a utility. And like you say, they have no choice. But part of the reason they have no choice is we've made it a monopoly. So there are people here who would gladly be served by other electric power generated transmission companies, and we don't allow that because we need to charge them more to help serve the others. That's the utility idea. So I don't
But we don't have a
agree.
monopoly.
What?
We're not going to have a monopoly. That's the problem.
I know. So that's the problem here. Is there a social goal? And I mean, maybe we're maybe we're having too much of this discussion. We just need to say, yeah, go experiment with prices. But I do think it's something we need to think about. Is our long-term goal to satisfy low-cost customers, make sure everybody in Palo Alto has option to fiber at reasonable prices, or is it just to run a business? And I don't think you can, I think you can prove you can run a business, but not do any of the others. And if you are running a business, you probably wouldn't do the others. That's why, they're not done by AT&T and Comcast.
What fraction of the city is not served today by a AT&T or Comcast or other fiber connection?
By fiber only, we'll take a look, but non-fiber, probably less than 5%, I would say.
So less than 5% of the city does not have an option to connect to fiber.
Oh, no, just to have broadband. I don't know the number. We'll have to look where AT&T is. I think when we did the study last year or a couple years ago, they were like 50% of the market. They're probably a higher percentage now.
I guess I'm just wondering, like, of all service providers, anyone selling fiber services, what's the coverage that they offer in Palo Alto? Do they cover 75% of Palo Alto homes, or is it 95%?
We would have to research that, but only AT&T offers fiber internet, really. So the other providers are either wireless or coaxial. So
I think what
AT&T
you
would be our
mean
main.
is broadband. I don't think you mean fiber.
Sure,
Yeah.
whatever. I don't know anything about internet other than I use it. But
We can get back to you on those
like
numbers.
high speed access to the internet. Let's be really generic.
Uh-huh.
Everybody in Palo Alto can already access this.
Most likely.
So like the purpose is to, if we're following on, Bob's statement of like, we don't have a monopoly, so we are trying to compete in this market. The only thing that you are competing on is cost, right? You're not competing on service necessarily.
I think another benefit we noted when we built the business case is by being a third provider, we will bring more competition and bring another option for customers, and that will hopefully drive down their prices as well. So that's something we will collect data during the pilot.
Okay.
So I do want to say one other thing. I think the concern I have is I don't think we should be worrying about the long term right now. I think we should basically be trying to prove that there's a business case that we can compete in the pilot.
Mhm.
And if we don't do that, I would assume it comes back to the UAC. I know there was a disagreement on that, but I would assume it comes back to UAC and we say, this pilot failed, either go back and do something different, or, let's not move forward. That's my assumption. My assumption is council doesn't say, oh my God, the pilot was a disaster. No one took us up on it. Let's move forward and build some more. I'd be really surprised, right? So, no, it's possible, right? But I'm just saying, I think if we don't get the pilot right and we don't get a big uptake, we won't learn anything, and that's what we should focus on. That's really all I'm saying tonight.
Yeah, I guess my only concern with that one, the pilot is a very small sample set. And we've learned a lot from the pilot that we could use for the phase one. So bringing down construction costs, bringing more efficient services or faster lighting people up. So I think we do want to at least expand a little bit to phase one, maybe not the complete phase one, but we'll learn more as we pass more homes. So that's the ask. But we will definitely bring you the data as we do the pilot.
I guess I would just say what you are doing though is you are learning something about the installation, but you're not diversifying the customers that you're learning from in the current phase one kind of continuation of this effort. From pilot to phase one is a very similar set of customers. If you were to go and do install in a different part of the city, you might have a very different set of uptakes or non-uptakes.
So yeah, there is opportunities to look at different areas too. It's just, then we would just not follow grid mod, which is fine. If we think there's a better market out there, we'll definitely entertain it.
Commissioner Gupta's hand is up and has
Commissioner
been for a
Gupta,
moment.
sorry, I didn't see you.
Yeah, I don't, no worries. Thank you. I think we're getting a little ahead of ourselves, and I felt like the conversation's been kind of veering into a very uncertain future and what it might hold. So the purpose of the pilot and the phase one really is to learn. It's to get ourselves installed in the pilot, learn about construction. It's not really geared given its limited sample size, to obtain a huge take rate. I think the target take rate on the pilot is 20%. And we use those learnings to expand to phase one, where then we're more focused on things like marketing and take rate. And in a way, I think the nomenclature we've chosen is confusing people. I view the entire phase one, of which the pilot is a subset, as what you might consider as a traditional pilot, or an MVP for, if we're going to use startup terminology, a minimum viable product. That's going to be the entire phase one. We'll have a big enough sample size. We'll see how we're doing against the competition. We'll learn about marketing. We'll learn about install. We'll learn about customer service. I just see this as a huge opportunity to learn. And from that, the city can decide whether there's a business case or an equity case to expand further. I don't mind the pilot area. I think it's good that it's in an area with a lot of competition from Comcast, Xfinity, and AT&T. We can actually really see how we do under pressure and how the competition responds in terms of pricing. And as staff said, it'll be very interesting to see how much money we save the Palo Alto residents, not just from our lower pricing, but from driving down the pricing of the competition. And while that doesn't show up on the city's bottom line, that might actually be a very substantial savings for Palo Alto residents. So I think this is the way that we've modeled the pricing, giving staff a lot of flexibility with maximum rates, makes a lot of sense at this stage. And we're going to learn, and we should continue these discussions, and we should continue capturing the data. I think that's very important. But I don't think we should get ahead of ourselves in terms of trying to understand exactly which way the market's going to be. Did we choose the exactly perfect pilot area? I think we're going to learn that and figure that out as we go.
Yeah, I'll just comment generally. First of all, I wasn't here when they made the final decision to make that move. Not that I'm disclaiming, talk about that, except that I'm disclaiming. But I think the conclusion from what I'm just going to say is I think at some point there probably is worth a recheck-in with council before we write too many multi-million-dollar checks, and that's probably on your timeline anyway. So, but since this has started, which has been 3 years ago when it started to get serious, it was about 3 years ago when it was approved. The competition's gotten better. I had Infinity Comcast for a long time, and I had them out every 2 weeks, and now I don't have them out. I don't see those guys anymore. So they've improved their downtime. So if we're trying to compete on service, that could be a major changed variable since this was put up. Is that they've improved their system enough that they don't need as much customer service, right? And the other thing, which is obvious, but I hope you're modeling this, is that the competition will respond. No matter what price we go to, they're going to match that. So I don't know even how you can roll that out because they have essentially unlimited funds. And at this point, knowing that we're in a pilot and we're a city and we don't have deep pockets, they might say, we'll undercut them by $2. No matter if they go down to $3, we're going to go down to $2 because they can outlast us in terms of how much money they have just to wipe us out. So I think there really are some potentially fatal problems here that we have to always be aware of. And I do think that council should, I don't want to go as far as to use the word reconsider. I just think they should be updated on what the current sense of those variables are.
Thank you.
Given where we are, do we have any specific feedback or should we just go? I would be ready to move.
So actually what I want to do is let them finish their slides.
Oh,
No more questions until the slides are done.
I apologize. Finish the
Then we
slides.
do public comment. And then we'll come back with one round where everyone can just summarize what they think about the whole thing. And then we'll vote on the motion. Okay?
This is a high level slide about marketing. This is just kind of examples of what types of different marketing. We'd love to hear what UAC would like to recommend. Maybe part of the subcommittee we can meet with and then give us some ideas and so forth. So we're just quick slide. We are formulating a plan. It's just that we would encourage or appreciate any kind of input you guys have for us here.
That's not necessarily tonight, as I mentioned.
Yes.
This is us foreshadowing where we are going. Again, tonight is specifically about the rates, so we can move through our necessary approval processes at that maximum and then, be ready to move through some of the stuff that doesn't require that regulatory.
And then here are the kind of key metrics that we're looking for. So we do have different metrics for the pilot versus phase one. For the pilot, again, it's technical feasibility, reliability, speed, uptime of the internet, demonstration of operational success, making sure we're able to deliver the service as we promise. And then also the take rate is about 20%, because I don't think we are planning on spending as much on marketing in the pilot, because it's very expensive. We did hear that to get someone to do full-blown marketing, they want a minimum of 1 year commitment, and it costs X many $1,000s. So I think for the pilot, we're gonna try to use city, community or city employees or events and whatnot to spread the word, and we'll do some direct marketing to those customers. And then for phase one, it is about reducing the construction costs, managing our costs, operational costs, finding those strategic partners to help with the installation, customer support, or even the call center or whatnot. But we'll find out more as we build out more, I guess. And at least the goal would be to get to at least a 33% take rate. And that's where the models show that we will at least break even by the 3rd or 4th year. So I think that is our goal. I think when we did the study back then, they were projecting 35, 40%. But I think the minimum we would need is at least 30 to 35 to break even. And then finally, like you all mentioned, proving that we're financially stable in this business. And then some upcoming key milestones, ordering the materials. We're gonna be issuing a PO soon. The hut has already been built, just waiting for the pad mount to get built now. We are working at Equinix and building out all the data, the servers and whatnot, so that's in progress. And we just signed a contract with the OSS BSS system, which is both the operational and business system. This will be the customer portal for the customers to sign up, and also before our internal control to monitor the equipment and so forth. It helps also with the billing. And then other things are just compliance and agreements to get in place. And that is it.
Okay, thank you. All right, does anyone want like one round of where you can say something or not? Or public comment, yes, public comment, sorry.
If any member of the public would like to speak on item number 3, please raise your hand or press star 9 now. We do have 2 public comments in person. Hamilton.
Okay, I'm going to start. This was about pricing, so I'm going to start pricing. As a data point, I pay $100 a month for AT&T Fiber after receiving a $5 discount for auto pay. As an existing customer, I don't get many of the discounts offered to new customers. This is for 1 gig speed, and my service is very reliable, more so than Comcast was. Thus, I'm happy with AT&T Fiber. The fiber maximum prices, the city's fiber maximum prices are similar to AT&T and look reasonable, although with discounts, AT&T comes out cheaper. However, the results of the trial are only valid if you're charging competitive rates and not just giving it away or offering unrealistically low prices that cannot cover your costs and pay back your upfront investment. The add-ons for parental filters and security add-on services at up to $10 each per month seems pricey. AT&T Fiber is including Active Armor internet security for free. So you might want to consider building those 2 services in or pricing them competitively. It should also be noted that AT&T offers a 20% discount for AT&T customers who sign up, AT&T wireless customers who sign up for AT&T Fiber. Brightmark in the packet found AT&T Fiber penetration was 89% of households in the trial area, which means any of those 89 could have already signed up for fiber at cheaper rates than will be offered by the city if they really wanted it. When evaluating financial viability of a municipal fiber, one thing that will be very important is to measure the total AT&T Fiber coverage for Palo Alto. According to bestneighborhoods.com, AT&T Fiber currently covers 71% of households in the city. The city needs 27% adoption rate with full paying customers to break even. That would mean almost every household that is not covered by AT&T Fiber would need to sign up with the city, or a lot of customers in areas where AT&T is already offering the service. Not a business model private industry would bet on unless you have a very successful pilot results. Most importantly, given the majority of municipal residential fiber services that lose money, this adds significant risk to an already strained city finances. My biggest area of concern continues to be the risk of borrowing $90 million upfront, which costs about double to pay that back, for a citywide rollout and then not being able to pay it off. In that case, general funds would be needed to be used so city services like firefighters and library hours could be cut. Thus, once the fiber trial is completed, if the city believes there's a viable case for a citywide rollout, it's critical the city does a detailed financial analysis and also puts in place a risk mitigation plan. Thank you.
Thank you.
Herb B.
Chair Scharf, Mayor Lowing, and Commissioners, I don't believe that what you have before you is something that you should take vote on for recommendation. You have in the presentation a summary page for the cash flow. Normally, for you to make a judgment, you should have monthly spreadsheets on the cash flow showing the assumptions used in that. And that would also provide a way of judging in the future how we're doing. I also don't think it's a good idea to suddenly make the dark fiber fund a dark fiber and lit fiber fund. That is, the FTTP project should be a customer of the dark fiber, and like any other customer would like the fiber that has been paid for by the dark fiber fund. In the case of the electric fund, it will be paying for its own fiber, so it's not going to be an individual payment. And looking at the spreadsheet, you can see whether, as was claimed, there will be great savings by combining the electric and fiber production. I recall for the entire city, what was about a year and a half ago, they said $11 million savings. And when I compared the FTT project without that, it seemed there was a $1 million savings for FTTP, which seemed to be the 10 million savings was for the electric fund. There are a number of issues with having the city be the ISP rather than somebody else. You know, if we're looking for a private party, look for someone who has a dedication to customer privacy that includes prohibiting data mining for the purposes of targeting advertising and tracking customer behavior. Utilities isn't involved in competitive markets, but this is a competitive market, so it's something new. Also, an ISP, would be connecting customer premises equipment and providing that equipment and providing the actual service. All of those are incident to property ownership. So I believe by having the city as the ISP, that if there are any changes to prices that would go in the upward direction, you're going to be having to get the approval of the customers to those price changes. And in terms of what else we've done, you look, have they been involved in anything involved with the internet? And yes, we have. We have city web pages. And if you ask the potential customers what they think of the city's website and whether they would want that same provider to be doing the ISP, I'd be interested in see what the answer would be. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Anyone else?
No additional hands raised.
All right. Why don't we come back to what you would make the motion?
Can I make one comment first?
Sure.
Okay, so I do think multiple people have hit on the fact that it's a competitive market, and it would be nice if we were a corporate, entity that could move quickly without regulation, et cetera. And I remember seeing signs in Atherton, which Atherton Fiber is being rolled out, but it's being rolled out by a private company. And I just wonder, is there any other kind of collaborative approach we could have taken to avoid having to have Palo Alto Fiber rolled out? Maybe it's not by us, but it's in collaboration with us, that would not require the same level of approvals and timeframe.
So yes, we have gone back to council multiple times looking for partnerships, even issuing RFPs to find a partner, but just the numbers didn't work out. They expect the city to pay for all the infrastructure, and then they would share the revenues with us if they were to provide the service. I think when we brought this to council, that was one of their options to find a partner, but they wanted the local control, and they thought we could do a better job and not rely on a partner, I guess, because then we'd kind of be dependent on their service and their quality.
Well, and I'll also note, Dave, thank you for that. That's where the conversation has been. In order to move through some of what I think you're talking about, which are the regulations, like fee schedules are approved by our council. And are we able to move through that in a different way if we were to approach this with either a partner or in a different manner? And ultimately, the municipal code is something that obviously the council does have control over. So should we choose to, dare I say, trust staff and essentially write code that would delegate authorities? We would need to talk with our legal counsel on what we would be able to do or not be able to do that. But those are really the guidelines that we're kind of talking about. So even with a partner, unless we changed how kind of fees and rates are to be approved based on our Muni code, even with a partner, it would still be coming to you with a kind of schedule of maximums.
Okay, thanks. I guess just coming back to the topic at hand, I think all three of us, and please speak up, members of the subcommittee, if you differ, but we had agreed prior that we were okay with the prices that were proposed by the staff to move forward to recommend them to council.
And there was a second part of your motion, wasn't there?
Well, the two out of three of us, that one. Okay, so the 2 out of 3 of us motion was to get a look-see. We would like to see some data from the pilot to understand how it is going prior to moving forward into phase 1 was what 2 out of 3 of us preferred to do if that was possible.
So those are the two outcomes, right? So why don't we take the first part of that as a motion, and then we can come back to the second part, right? So why don't you make the motion?
Okay, so I move to approve the rates that have been presented for recommendation to City Council.
I second that.
As a clarification, you mean the maximum rates?
Yes, the maximum rates, which were on the slide, yes.
Okay.
And I heard a second from Commissioner Gupta. Is that correct?
That's correct. Thank you.
Any discussion on that? Nope. You want to?
I won't be able to vote for that because I don't agree. I'm not even sure we understand. I'm not even sure we understand clearly on this dais what and where is pilot, timeframe of pilot versus what and where is phase 1. If we're making this a 2-step, that's one issue. Another issue is pricing. If I understand the pricing, high, medium, low, I commented earlier on the lack of clarity there. So I'm not even sure what numbers it is that we're voting for, but $95, in my opinion, is DOA strategically. And so for what it's worth, I won't vote for it.
I think we had a more detailed discussion in subcommittee. Staff has presented up to numbers which are maximums in order to give themselves leeway to test prices that are up to that level. It's not a level to be anchored on at all. So
Well, then I wouldn't consider it very useful advice to be giving council, just to say, here's some really high numbers and staff's going to be smart and probably won't go anywhere near there. That's not much of a guiding light. And I'll repeat again the point. I don't sense any clarity on the strategy, the purpose and intent of pricing. What are we pricing for? To get a lot of customers, to get a high margin and profit, to serve the underserved? If we don't even know that, I'm not able to say yes to a price recommendation, but I'm just one vote.
You want to call the roll?
Commissioner Gupta,
Yes.
Commissioner Metz,
Yes.
Commissioner Croft,
Yes.
Chair Scharf,
Yes.
Vice Chair Mater,
Yes.
Commissioner Tuger,
No.
Commissioner Phillips.
Yes.
Motion carries 6-1.
Now, as I understood it, the second part of this is that at the conclusion of the pilot, was that it?
The thought was, yes, at the conclusion of the pilot, to get a look at the data. I don't really know if there is a point at which we move from the pilot into the phase one. It would be helpful to understand how that is planned, but it was my impression from the way that it's been bifurcated in cost that there actually is a point at which the pilot is done and phase one begins, in which case I'd like to see the data. So could you please clarify what is if there is a dividing line between those two phases?
There is right now, because we haven't issued any construction or design for phase, well, we have done design for the electric side, but not any construction yet. So phase one for grid mod probably won't begin, if I'm guessing, Mohammed, till Q3 of this year, sorry. But we could definitely bring back the pilot results before we expand fiber to the premise of phase one. I'll probably ask for either 3 months or 6 months after completion of the pilot, so we can get a better sense of data before we come back.
So you're going to wait 3 or 6 months before you do the rest of the?
No, to bring the data back to you guys from the pilot for
Right, but
fiber.
if the point is to stop you from going, or to make a recommendation to council to stop the process because it didn't work, or we thought it didn't work, or we thought you needed to do something different than what you were doing, is there an opportunity to do that? Or are you just, I mean, if you've rolled into doing the rest of the construction and you've brought us the data, I'm not sure that gives us the opportunity to say to council, hey, we think this isn't working, or we think that the
Like
next
even-
phase should do something different.
Like even for the pilot, we don't roll the whole fiber stuff out until the pilot area is done for the power, at least a good portion of it. So we wouldn't roll fiber right when power starts phase one. We will probably wait till it's done, like 25% done before we start even, because it doesn't make sense to start lashing fiber on just a few blocks. For economies of scales, we would have to go for bigger areas. So there will be.
So
a
Dave, I
cost.
think actually what they're asking is really more of a timing phasing thing. So let's, once the pilot is, built out, and we, go full bore on the marketing, and then we wait 3 to 6 months in that pilot area to then bring that data back to the commission. What's going to happen during that 3 to 6 months that you finished building the pilot? And you, in theory, would be moving on to building out the additional capacity in phase one. So you've built 1,000 customers or passings, and you're kind of collecting that data. Does construction of the additional 5,000 passings pause for that 6 months? Is that staff's intent, or would construction continue during that 6 months?
We could stage it however we choose, so we could pause it.
What's the current plan,
The current plan, I don't
Mohammed?
think it's got that far yet.
Good evening, Commissioners. So the gating item is the hut.
Correct, but
And the
that's
hut-
for the pilot.
Yes.
But once the pilot is done,
Once the pilot is done, we have Q4 to evaluate whether we proceed and move forward to phase one.
got it. So you would say, take 3 months, basically, once
to
you've built
evaluate.
out to evaluate.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
to your point, Commissioner, if we gave you 3 months worth of data, probably still relevant, but just barely. If we gave you 6 months of data, we'd probably be a quarter into it. I would like to appreciate that staff thinks that they can get something done that fast. Usually I have found that it takes a little bit longer. One of the things the commission could consider is when you make this recommendation, ultimately this is going to go to the finance committee and the full council. What you might recommend is that the commission recommend phasing of construction with a full pause on further build out of phase one, if that is ultimately the intention, until whatever your recommendation is in terms of time, data, and the pilot.
I guess I heard him say something different. Maybe just to clarify, I heard that there's built in that at the end of the pilot, when you get to a certain point, you're going to decide whether or not to do the next phase, but you're going to give yourself a quarter,
3 months to
3
kind of
months.
figure out what the next
figure out-
phase would
and-
look like.
But then before you do that, that's when you would come to us. I don't care when, but you do that and then you go to the finance committee, I assume, and you go to council, right? Or not? I mean, is that not the plan, or that's my confusion?
Yeah, Mohammed, when you say you would take 3 months, Q4, to evaluate phase one, are you talking about it's a evaluation of a go, no-go? Or are you talking about evaluation of how best to strategically implement
I'm
it?
not sure it'll give us enough time to market and sell and penetrate. and
Agreed.
pass, Right? So we're targeting end of the year, which is Q4,
Correct.
right? To be done with this. The marketing effort will start in parallel as we start to do the build out for the fiber infrastructure.
When does phase
Yeah.
So
Commissioner,
Grid Mod, the pilot, I'm happy to share with you, has been completed. So now we're moving into phase one.
so, yeah, let's pull us back into this. So, and I think Commissioner Gupta, you are
Yeah, I
probably
have a-
taking us there.
I have a point of order on this.
Sure.
This question didn't actually come before the budget subcommittee, and we did not discuss it at the actual budget subcommittee meeting. I understand there might have been emails that trended towards that part of the discussion, but it wasn't an output from our budget subcommittee meeting, nor is this question properly agendized at this UAC meeting. Now, if someone wants to bring it forward on the agenda for a proper discussion where staff has time to kind of put together what the timing of this could look like and what the proposal would look like, that could happen. But I don't think we're well situated or compliant with the Brown Act to actually discuss this and decide this here, because what was narrowly on the agenda were the rate proposals, and that was what was discussed at the budget subcommittee, and that's what is agendized here. We didn't discuss anything else.
We did discuss marketing strategy, how we're going to make this successful. I think that has been a subject in multiple subcommittee meetings, but on this agenda, if it's simply rates and we can't touch other things.
I actually think it is agendized because
Okay.
of the way staff presented a whole list on marketing rates. They didn't, other things. They talked about the whole strategy. That's what their slides were. And so therefore it says packages. And I take that to mean the package that was presented to us. So we can discuss anything within the package, which was marketing, rates, timing, how you roll this out. I think the whole item was agendized. So I actually disagree on that. And since I'm chair, I get to make the ruling. Sort of the way it works. Of course, I'm losing my voice. But, I think we basically haven't come to a discussion of where we are on that yet, Commissioner Gupta. I think we were just trying to understand from staff what their plan is, to be honest. I'm turning it back to you, Rachel.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I feel reluctant to make the motion without knowing what the plan is. And so what would be helpful to know is what is the timeline for the pilot? Meaning, when do we build it? When do we market it? How much time do we give ourselves to try all these different marketing techniques? And then can we look at the data? And if our plan does not accommodate that kind of staging because we need to continue building on a rolling basis, maybe the request doesn't make any sense at all. But I don't understand how those phases lay out. It would be helpful if you guys know that, to just kind of talk through, when do you start building the pilot area? When can you start marketing? How long do we want to give ourselves to try and convert people before we have a sense for how the pilot's going? And in your current plans, are you already planning to be building phase 1 areas during that time?
I don't think staff is prepared to answer that tonight. I think we are, as I mentioned at the beginning, we brought these rates forward now because we're trying to be proactive so that to the extent we're allowed and able to do early customers and early adoptions, we have the flexibility to. Without them, we are not able to add anybody. So we are not yet there. And I think that is a next phase or step that we need to be bringing out in terms of a broader milestone outreach, frankly, as well as the components of it. So before Dave tries to answer that, I'm just going to be clear, be honest. We're not prepared to have that discussion tonight. I think if that is an item we could come back to have that discussion. We are ready. We're planning to have a kind of fiber update at some point with the UAC between now and December. And so we can take this under advisement to include these pieces. Like I said, we don't even have a go live date. We're still dealing with permitting, building the hut and the like. And so these rates are ultimately, you all go on summer break, council goes on summer break, and ultimately it's a 3-month process for us to move through this. And so we really are trying to be proactive, knowing that the pilot intake rates are so important.
So unless anyone has any other concerns, I think we could just end the item here. Is everyone good with that?
Yeah, that's fine.
All right, let's move on to the next item.
Yes, they voted to recommend approval of the rates. The up to, correct, 6-1 with Commissioner Tucker voting no. Mics, please.
Turn it off. Okay. So the next item is Utility Advisory Commission Finance Subcommittee recommends the commission receive the FY 2026 Utilities Department budget, and the commission recommends City Council adoption.
So as I mentioned, we didn't get much time to go through this, but I do recommend that the subcommittee recommends that we all review the budget. Is that correct? Is that what you're asking for?
I thought you recommended we approve it.
We have not had a chance to review it in detail. It was provided to us the night before or the day before, and we didn't have much time in the meeting to discuss it. So I think better addressed here.
Okay, so the subcommittee has no recommendation on this then. Is that correct or?
That is my understanding as well.
Okay, so no, let me ask something. Are you staff prepared to go through this, or should we table this and then come back to in the next UAC after the budget committee has gotten a chance to look at this, or is it better to go tonight?
The budget committee actually reviewed the utilities budget today. By the time your next commission meeting occurs in June, all of the finance committee meetings will be done. So I would suggest you do it tonight.
Okay.
I'll add that I did do a deep dive through it and ask staff questions separately from our budget subcommittee meeting. So I can provide some commissioner insight at least.
Okay, great.
Ustap, do you want to provide a brief summary of your own review as a budget committee member to focus any issues? Because the purpose of a subcommittee is, to help the rest of the commission who does not review this in as great detail or have the opportunity to ask questions to efficiently move through this. So I think it would be helpful recognizing that other members were somewhat disadvantaged by the late receipt. If you have specific comments that you want to help focus our attention on, raising those now would be valuable.
Sure, I can give a quick overview if that's helpful.
Yeah, just a minute or two, but yes,
Oh,
please.
okay, a minute or two. Kind of the very overarching story is that net expenses are up across the board. I think that's to be expected. We're seeing that across utilities across the country. We're seeing rising commodity costs and pass-throughs from our renewable power contracts and for wholesale Hetch Hetchy water. But we are expecting gas to be roughly flat. And I do think our estimate on gas prices going into next year is probably fairly conservative, so that's good. Relatedly, we also see some large CIP increases. And note that those increases do not seem to include future bond finance projects like the wastewater headworks or grid mod. And then for fiber, we expect the fiber to the premises project to shift from construction to service delivery over the next year. And again, future CapEx for that post-pilot phase one would not be from the fiber fund. It would be from some sort of bond financing likely, or other proposal. So that's kind of the overarching story of the budget. I had lots of other specific questions and happy to dive into detail over the course of this.
Thank you. Staff, you want to give the presentation?
Hi. Good evening, Mayor Lowing, Chair Scharf, and Commissioners. Thank you for having me here tonight. My name is Anna Vong, a Senior Business Analyst, and I will be presenting on the fiscal year 26 proposed utilities operating and capital budgets. So the purpose of the presentation here tonight is to provide some highlights of the proposed budget and answer any questions that you may have on the budget. At the end, we'll request that the Commission recommend that the Council approve proposed fiscal year 26 utilities operating and capital budget. So the fiscal year 26 budget is largely a status quo budget with a continued focus on upgrades for grid modernization, fiber to the premise deployment, and the rate stabilization. Our proposed changes, which aren't really a lot of changes compared to last year, is just to complete the construction of phase one, the pilot of the grid the electric grid modernization for the 1,000 customers, and then begin the phase one to support the additional 5,000 customers, as well as align our Palo Alto Fiber internet service along with the grid mod. And then, as we've discussed earlier, evaluate and refine the service delivery strategies and our product offerings. In the coming year, we'll also look at developing a natural gas transition strategy, and then continue to replace aging gas, sewer, water mains, and to enhance safety and reliability. On our next slide here, this is the proposed budget by expense category and compares fiscal year 25 adopted to fiscal year 26 proposed. And you can see here in the change column, it's sorted by the largest expense and then the percentage change. Our top categories are our capital improvement program, commodity purchases, general expenses, contract services, which I'll go into detail in the next slides. So in terms of cost increase, our capital improvement projects, our programs, actually, I think it's correct to state here that it's the Hanover substation and grid mod. There are some net changes that happened for the projects. So there's, and in all, net change is 17.5 million. There was no specific project. If there is one, it would probably be the gas main replacement 25, because in last year we programmed just 8 million for it and that was, we were hoping to get the 16.5 million grant from PHMSA to increase it to the 16.5. So that's probably one of the larger change they will see. And the next one would be the Commodity purchases, 9.5 million is attributed to electric. That's like the local capacity resource adequacy increases, scheduled increase from Western, as well as transmission charges for electricity. And then for the water commodity, we have a 46 cents change for commodities for per CCF. And then we have our treatment costs of 600,000 that's increasing. And in general expenses, we have programmed 3 million to expand our existing customer efficiency programs that are funded from restricted reserves, such as the low carbon fuel services. Sorry, forgot the acronym there. And then cap and trade and public benefits. So some of the programs that it will be supporting is the multifamily EV chargers, the commercial HVAC electrification, heat pump water heater, to name a few. And then in the next category would be the contract services and supplies and material. And I group those together because that is the funding for the operational support for, or the OpEx that we mentioned earlier for fiber to the premise. That supports our marketing strategies, the operational and business software, as well as the on-site installation services. And previously, I think there were some questions about cost or allocated costs. Actually, Dave, would you mind taking the slide? Thank you.
Yeah, so these are kind of the main drivers of why administrative and operating costs have been increasing over the last several years. Some of it is the city's central support. So this is what we call the cost plan. So this is like purchasing, legal, HR, facilities, payroll, and all those costs. So as utilities gets larger with more FTEs, we do require more support. And as we get more projects as well and applications, we do need also more IT support. So those costs have also been going up as well. And then other cost drivers are rent, electrification of new fleet, of replacement fleets, higher salaries, and also some of the insurance and our proactive funding of pensions, which is a council initiative.
Here, this slide talks about our cost. Sorry about that. Here, this slide talks about our cost containment measures. We have implemented a fee on bill payments over 5,000. We have also combined or grouped our projects so that they're larger in size, and rather than doing it every other year, rather than doing smaller projects every year for economies of scale. And we've pre-ordered equipment and secured the pricing for long lead time equipment. We've pre-ordered about 1,000 transformers at a cost of 4.5 million. And I think it was 10 to 20 switches that's on order. And those pricing is good as long as we order. Anyway, okay. And then moving on to the next part, and for fiscal year 26, we have no new requests for FTEs, so we're holding the headcount. And the plans would be to issue new competitive bids or look for new competitive construction contracts, as well as proposals for the grid mod and the FTTP as projects. And we're looking to, we're looking to reduce our billing costs through paperless billing. The paperless billing campaign is continuous. We do that every few months to just encourage our customers to convert to paperless billing. And I think one of the US Commission's directives is to look at passing through credit card fees. That begin the coming year. We'll also look at updating our standard connection fees to reflect our current costs. And we're meeting with the subcommittee tomorrow to go over that as well. So this slide here talks about our electric fund, the capital improvement project program. Here, if I could highlight, or just to put it out there. The revenues is missing the bond financing in fiscal year 27-28. That's a clerical administrative error. And in the next version for the proposed budget, it will be included. So the expenses for the 5-year outlook is 313 million. And below, we note some of the large projects. So in this 5-year period, 195 million for the grid mod. But the total estimate for this project, again, is 300 million. We'll be working on completing the pilot area and then the remaining overhead areas. We do have a couple slides following this that talks about the grid mod, and I'll segue to Mohammed in a minute. The next project here is the 5.5 million for Colorado Power Station, where we're looking to upgrade transformer number 3 and its peripherals. And then the 4.5 million for substation breakers, where we'll be replacing the breakers that connect the substations. And then we're implementing a residential time of use rates. That's not capital, it's more operating side, but that's something that we'll be working on in the next year. And then next slide, it would be the grid mod, some information about the grid mod status. And I'll turn that over to Mohammed.
I apologize, didn't introduce myself very well. So Mohammed Fatah, and I'm manager of electric and fiber engineering with the utilities. So I'm tasked with giving you a snapshot of grid mod, and hopefully I can answer any of your questions that you may have here. As I said a few minutes ago, I'm happy to report that we actually completed the pilot project as well. And what that entailed was replacing transformers, secondary wire, poles, and then in addition to that, adding the steel messenger for the fiber to the premise project, of which minimizes the amount of work that's necessary on the fiber side, the communication side, because it's merely lashing onto an existing steel messenger there as well. We have connected 903 homes through the grid modernization project there as well. And we've trialed newer products and newer technology there as well. Of course, it's all overhead construction. So we've started using fiberglass cross arms, for example. They're stronger, they're longer lasting. And we're looking at using various types of insulators as well at 12 kV, similar to polymer insulators, which are lighter and sturdier than ceramic-based insulators there as well.
Interrupting. I didn't see in the slide, how many homes have we completed?
903.
903. So
903.
we've completed almost 1,000 homes.
Yes.
In the pilot zone.
Yes.
It'll be exciting to hear more about that. Thank
So
you.
we call them ready for electrification.
Ready for electrification.
Yeah. So we have improved our relationships with vendors. We've got diversity from a vendor standpoint. We've pre-ordered transformers, distribution transformers, in anticipation of continuing the grid mod expansion project there as well. We've got great relationships with the vendors. They're holding some of the stock there for us, of course. I mean, they won't hold it indefinitely, but it avoids our need to secure additional warehousing facilities there as well. We have about 500 transformers and 600 poles to go in phase 1. And if I may also explain why we chose phase 1. Phase 1 was a 4 to 12 kV conversion project prior to grid mod. And we're in the process of replacing anything that's 2.4 kV, 4 kV, upgrading all the way to 12 kV, of which Hopkins substation will eventually be retired because of the 4 kV being upgraded to 12 kV there as well. 272,000 feet of secondary cable. And I may have shared that with you in the past, but we're using AWAC secondary cable, which collapses the conductors onto a steel messenger that hangs onto the pole, reduces the need for a cross arm, to attach the secondary wire and provides the additional safety of having an insulated wire for the secondary as well.
Mohammed, can I interject briefly? This is all tremendous information about the grid mod project itself. And I think the commissioners all deeply respect all of the staff's tremendous expertise. We trust you on that. I think this item is agendized around budget. And I have no comment on how many feet of cable need to be purchased this year and what effect that has on the budget. I would, given that we're agendized for 30 minutes, really appreciate the opportunity to discuss the budget. So with all due respect, if it's possible to move a little bit more quickly to the end of this presentation, I think that that would be valuable.
Most definitely. Okay.
Without,
Next.
I'm not trying to avoid discussion of grid mod, which I think is very important, but that is not the purpose of today's item.
Okay, next slide, please. Yeah, so I think it's always, whenever you do a pilot, and I know this has been an open discussion here, it's always good to have results of the pilot and areas where we feel that we've improved, right? So I break them down into project management, supplier, supply chain, and administrative there as well. So the city and the engineering staff hasn't been accustomed to building and constructing a massive project such as the pilot project. We stepped into it, and I'm happy to say that our team was able to deliver on that there as well. We're able to synchronize all project phases there as well.
We
Understood
can
how.
just go to the next slide. I read this one.
Thank you.
If we're leaving grid mod, I have a budget question relevant to grid mod. The number here stands out, 300 million as the total project. This is a number that has been discrepant to a hair-raising degree in this meeting in prior months. What is the actual overall grid mod project? We typically are looking at FY 26 to 30. This, I think, is FY 24 to 33. Begs the question, how much have we spent so far in the first 2 years to date on grid mod? Because I think it's 198 million in the 5 years to come. What have we spent already?
We've sent 10 million so far for grid mod on the pilot portion
Only
of the
10
project.
million?
Only 10 million, yes.
Yes.
Wow. Okay. So 10 million and 190, and then there'll be some 3 years in the out that I'm.
Correct. It's it is not 300 million in the 5-year CIP because of exactly as you just noted, it's a condensed 5-year time period. The project will extend beyond that.
But in the press, or to the degree people are
course.
talking about grid mod, they use numbers like 300 to 350. And so that's consistent with this. In prior meetings, we've said numbers like 500, even 700 million. So,
and all due respect, Commissioner, we did correct the record for that,
Okay.
to your point, and we had that discussion at a couple months ago, UAC
so this number of
discussion.
around 300 million is
Correct.
vetted and solid and.
It's an estimate at this point, when you're
course.
talking about a project this long and the current volatility, everything from labor to supplies. If I was able to guarantee it would be that much, I would probably be in a different role. But that's staff's best estimate at this point in time, given the information we have.
We can come back to it later, but the overall CapEx in this year soars from like, I don't know, 55 to roughly 90 something million. Again, this fiscal year, it's in the 50s. In prior years, it's been in the 10 to 15 range. So something extraordinary is happening as, the snake eats the, whatever snakes eat, I can't remember that metaphor. And then, as you know, of course, I'm just looking at your charts, the numbers come down quickly. So I'm wondering whether grid mod is driving the FY 26 pop to over 90 million, or if it's many other factors. It is mostly grid mod, right?
Mostly grid mod, right. Grid mod is about 46 million in hard costs, and then so it's really about 52 million that we've budgeted for grid mod this for fiscal year 26. The remaining is the other one-time projects and ongoing projects.
So it sounds like if you were to graph the grid mod 300 million plus, it starts pretty modest, 10, 15 is what we've spent so far, goes up big right this year, and then it does taper into the out years to 33. Is that kind of a fair?
I think it will keep going. I think right now 10 million because of the overhead area, so that is the least expensive phase. But as we finish the overhead, we start going to the underground areas and the substations, the cost will start escalating. So that's when you'll see the bigger dollars come in.
I believe this was all discussed in the cases for the projected budgets when we set this year's budget, correct? We set this year's budget for electric utility. We also looked at projections for budgets in future years during that prior meeting. So we should, if you go back, it's pretty well documented 5 years out, and this simply reflects that for each and every one of the utilities, which is why these summary slides are a helpful reminder for the utility overall. But I'd just like to remind the commissioners and staff that we have already seen these numbers in much finer resolution in previous meetings. And I think the point is discussion in the next 4 minutes.
Yeah, Commissioner Motter, thank you. Why don't I take over the slides and try and breeze through them with the assumption that you will pull me back if you have questions.
But let's wait for questions till we get to the end.
Wonderful. Okay. The next one is the fiber fund. This is the combination of both the dark fiber as well as the FTTP that we've talked about. So you can kind of see in FY 2026, you've got a higher expense on the capital side because that is talking about that phase one build out. And then the expenses normalize to our kind of routine level. Next slide. Gas fund. So as staff mentioned, this reflects, as you can see, the normal maintenance. The projects are below. This also has, and you'll see that spike of 23 million, that 16 million grant from the federal government. That's actually split between FY 26 and 27. We actually found a mistake in this, so thank you to staff as they were looking at it. We do need to recognize that the second half of that grant in FY 27. So where you see revenues is 0.5, it's actually going to go up by 8 or so million. So we daylighted that with the Finance Committee today, and we'll fix that before budget adoption. Next slide. Wastewater collection fund, we have had a lot of discussion about this when we were talking about the rates. So this is reflective of that. And you can see that delay in the CIP that we've talked about. FY 2026 is only 3.7 million. And then you see it phase to 2028 and 2030. We do want to note that in 2030, that 27 million is frankly too large. And so what we do expect is we're going to shift some of that out beyond FY 2030. So as you know, we try and phase our construction projects so we can gain orders of scale, orders of magnitude, and then yet continue to reach our goals of replacement. Next slide, please. The water fund, you can see we've got our typical capital projects associated with our water main replacement schedules. And I should say for the public, details on where specifically each of these projects are going to be improved or replaced, frankly, are in the CIP book itself, like the actual streets and locations. So I won't go through those. If you're curious, you can go in the maps. We also have the reservoir seismic upgrades and rehabs for Park and Dull. Next slide. So, you know, the UAC has been really interested in staffing, and rightfully so, as we have a number of vacancies, and we just, obviously, we use a lot of people to deliver the services. So this really just kind of provides a snapshot. Obviously, vacancies change on a weekly basis with turnover as well as our hiring and recruitment. But this is to help provide some just visibility, I should say. Next slide. Ultimately, staff does recommend, the UAC recommend that council, Finance Committee and council approve the proposed or adopt the proposed operating and capital budgets. And like I said, staff will make a couple of those adjustments.
Okay, I'm sure Megan would like to move to approve the budget.
I move to approve the budget.
I have one question. What was the Finance Committee's response to this? Do they have any changes or?
No, we need to do that.
Yeah, that's a fair question. They had many questions, and our Chief Operating Officer, Mr. Kratori, did a wonderful job engaging in that Q&A, but ultimately they did tentatively recommend approval.
Tentatively.
Oh, I'm sorry. That's a process. They have until May 20th to make a formal recommendation. So a tentative approval today means that typically it will be a formal recommendation in 2 weeks.
I second Vice Chair Mauder's motion.
Before we do that, we didn't go to the public,
Oh,
right?
you're right.
So to see if there's anyone from the public.
If any member of the public would like to speak on item number 4, please raise your hand or press star 9 now. No hands raised.
Is there any further discussion on the proposed motion? Seeing none, you want to call the roll?
Commissioner Gupta,
Yes.
Commissioner Metz,
Yes.
Commissioner Croft,
Yes.
Chair Scharf,
Yes.
Vice Chair Mater,
Yes.
Commissioner Tucker,
Yes.
Commissioner Phillips,
Yes.
motion carries 7-0.
Thank you. Moving on to the next item, which is the annual water supply and demand assessment. I noticed we only have 15 minutes for this, so I assume the staff presentation's 5.
Or less. I don't even know that we did a presentation. I think we were just going to do oral comments.
Good evening, Commissioners. Carla Daly, Assistant Director of Utilities. Yes, this should be a very quick item. This is an administrative regulatory requirement that all urban water agencies need to file with the state every year, showing our supply and demand balance. This is a non-drought year, so it's a very boring item this year. And we just ask that you recommend approval by council, which is the process that's laid out in our urban water management plan for how this report gets filed with the state every year.
And that's it, right? All right. I will recommend approval.
I'll second.
Okay. Any discussion, any questions, discussion, whatever? I do need public comment, but I'll first see if there's any questions or public comment. No. All right, let's go to the public.
If any member of the public would like to speak on item number 5, please raise your hand or press star 9 now. No hands raised.
Okay, do you want to call the roll?
Commissioner Gupta,
Yes.
Commissioner Metz,
Yes.
Commissioner Croft,
Yes.
Chair Scharf,
Yes.
Vice Chair Mater,
Yes.
Commissioner Tucker,
Yes.
Commissioner Phillips,
Yes.
motion carries.
Advisory Commission recommend the City Council approve the 10-year efficiency goals for 2026, 2035. We caught back up.
Hello, Tim Scott, Resource Planner. I'll be presenting. I was allocated 45 minutes, but I'll try to make it quick
Wait, you were allocated 45 minutes for the presentation or for the item?
for the item.
Just confirming.
It'll be actually a 1-hour presentation.
Wonderful.
Let's
We
go ahead and-
appreciate your brevity.
Thanks. Let's go ahead and move to the first slide. So after state legislation passed in 2006, the first set of the city's 10-year electric EE goals were adopted in 2007. And these, to be clear, are just for electric energy efficiency, not gas. We adopt our new goals every 4 years, and these goals are used for the City of Palo Alto's supply resource planning and EE program budget planning. Next slide. So looking at the chart on the right, for a little additional context, the gray bars that we're looking at here are the actual savings each fiscal year, and the colored lines are our different sets of energy efficiency targets for the different adoptions over the years. And looking at these savings, you can see that Palo Alto was achieving our EE goals until 2020, where COVID started impacting participation rates. We've also seen factors like state codes becoming stricter, impacting the level of claimable savings that we're able to achieve. And then on electrification, we've had increasing focus on developing electrification programs. To be clear, it's not an either or between energy efficiency and electrification, but we've been prioritizing some electrification programs. For example, there was previous consideration for relaunching the Home Energy Report program that had some issues in the past and some additional issues when trying to relaunch it. So that has taken a backseat to some alternative programs.
May I ask a very quick question on interpreting this graph? I just didn't
Yes.
understand it. How are energy efficiency savings calculated? Because it does strike me that the electrification focus is an important one. And if it's the energy efficiency savings is measured as a decrease in electric load, that is in direct contrast with the overarching electrification priorities of the utility.
Yes, so for the energy efficiency savings, they are calculated when we complete an energy efficiency project, such as a LED lighting upgrade. We are measuring the impact of the new equipment that's going in compared to the previous electric usage. And on the electrification piece that you brought up, there are some efficiency savings theoretically associated with every electrification project that installs a more efficient piece of equipment, but those electrification savings are not captured in this chart. These are only for traditional energy efficiency measures.
Oh, why aren't they captured?
Well, there's a couple of reasons. Firstly, for these energy efficiency goals, they've been traditionally focused on our energy efficiency measures. And when we're including electrification, there's additional conversations that would need to have with reconciling setting efficiency goals for electrification here with our other electrification goals that are in, for example, the sustainability goals around 80 by 30. And then, sorry, did you have something you wanted to say?
I was just going to add that the heat pump water heater program, Christine Tam, Senior Resource Planner with Resource Management. So when we convert a gas water heater to a heat pump water heater, we do count the gas savings that is included in the DSM report and the quarterly report to the UAC. However, those savings are not included. We don't convert the gas savings to electric savings for the purpose of the 10-year EE achievements.
So I just wanted to add something just a little higher level. I think, this whole topic is kind of in transition across the state, and all utilities across the state are focusing on electrification. We still have this traditional focus on EE, and we're a little bit in a weird space right now. So agencies in general and the state in general is grappling with this a bit. And in the meantime, we've had really strict building codes come into effect. And so I think we're just in a place of transition around this topic right now.
Could I ask a process question? So who sees this and say we approve it, what happens to it? And what happens if you don't meet your goals? Is there the state give you a stern talking to, or is there something else that happens?
These goals will be shared with the CEC, and I believe that I can't speak 100%, but I believe they just use them for their energy efficiency modeling and planning. There's no penalty for not achieving your goal.
Okay. So why do we need to review them? Is that part of the statutory process?
We're required to adopt goals just to, I believe, provide an estimate for the range that we foresee our electrification efficiency achievements for that year and the coming 10 years.
Okay, I think it's good information. It would be very hard for me to think of the committee going through and saying, no, you need to move this up or move it down. But given that, I'll just let you move ahead.
Okay. Any other questions before I move forward?
Can I ask a different question on process or just what we're discussing today? So we're discussing metrics and setting a target. Are we going to have another conversation at any time about what are the strategies to achieve those? Do you want any comments on those now, like ideas? Or are we just talking about the rate?
The purpose is to approve these or recommend the adoption of these targets. If there's time and there are suggestions that people want to put forward, we could talk about that, but we could also set a separate follow-up time to discuss additional approaches or strategies.
What would you like me, do you want me to talk about these things or do we?
Not right now.
No, okay.
Let's go through our thing and see where we are in terms of time and stuff.
Okay, next slide, please. So looking on the right here, just for clarification, the blue line is the proposed 10-year targets, the dotted line being the gross goals and the solid line being net. The difference is the free ridership concept of for every amount of savings we get through our programs, there's a certain percentage of those savings that would have been moved forward by customers regardless of the program. And currently we set that at 85%, so 15% reduction. And these targets that we're bringing forward are based on an achievable EE potential study that we complete in partnership with a number of other POUs in California. Again, some of the decreasing potential is due to the increasingly strict state codes and standards. Particularly, I want to highlight the change in non-residential lighting codes, which will have a large impact on our electric efficiency savings moving forward. Non-residential lighting is a large part of our efficiency portfolio. It's been up to over 60% of our energy efficiency savings in recent years. So that will definitely be an impact that we're going to have to consider moving forward. They also account for market saturation improvements. Every time we move a customer through one of our efficiency programs or they do an efficiency upgrade on their own, that's reducing the sample of these projects that are available in Palo Alto as we're trending towards a more efficient city and more efficient usage. And then lastly, I want to touch on the conservation voltage reduction program. We're currently estimating that it would start coming online in 2028 and then ramping up savings through 2032. This is tied to the timeline of our AMI meter rollout, which would enable us to measure the voltage at different points in our system and optimize the voltage in order to stay within the acceptable threshold where it won't have an impact on customer behavior or how they're using their appliances, but there is a potential savings to be captured if we're able to measure that voltage level. Next slide, please. This is just a really quick slide. A lot of the discussion and some of the previous slides around targets are framed as a percent of our electric load, and this is just putting them into perspective in a megawatt hour unit. You can see that our proposed targets are between 2,000 and 4,500 megawatt hours annually. Next slide, please. This is a look at our cumulative electric efficiency savings that we're anticipating, which will represent 2.8% of the forecasted electric load after at the end of the 10-year period. This is accounting for different useful life of efficiency measures. It's not just a sum of each annual year. For example, lighting may be 10 to 12 years, where behavioral changes could be 3 to 5. And also this slide shows how dominant the non-residential sector is in our share of electric efficiency achievements. Next slide, please. Here we're looking at the anticipated budget that's required to achieve these electric efficiency targets. And this is based on program cost data, including incentives, admin costs, marketing, et cetera. And just a note that this cost trend doesn't follow the savings trend because of the conservation voltage reduction program. We're anticipating relatively low costs because there's not associated incentives and relatively low administrative costs. Next slide, please. So next steps, if there are any additional feedback or questions, I'm happy to answer them. We're asking for the UAC to recommend the proposed 10-year efficiency targets for council adoption. Assuming that the targets are recommended, then we would be bringing them to council for adoption in early June, and then they would be shared with the California Energy Commission, as I mentioned earlier. Next slide. And this is just a slide restating the recommendation and showing the 10-year targets in table format. And that's all I have. Thank you. Any questions?
I have one question. So,
yeah.
oh, I'm sorry.
If any member of the public would like to speak on item number 6, please raise your hand or press star 9 now. No hands raised.
All right, now we can go to your question.
It's a quick question. This looks like it's all megawatts are created equal, right? There's no concept here of reducing peak versus off-peak. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
We would, as a commission, like to collectively register our frustration, or at least, comment that the goals here do not seem aligned with the reality of operating a grid in today's environment.
It's kind of from the negawatt era of electric power.
Go ahead. Yeah, could you describe the technical basis for the 2.8% energy efficiency goal? Because I didn't see anything like that in here. And the text references the energy efficiency potential study, but I don't see that linked. So could you maybe talk about the technical basis for this? Like, has there been an audit of buildings for energy efficiency and, the obvious approach for that?
Yeah, I can talk a little bit to the methodology and the key inputs that are used in that potential study. I think that generally we don't provide full spreadsheet models, but the study is based on looking at which measures are considered cost effective in our area based on our rates and appliance costs and assumed usage of those appliances. Also considering our existing portfolio of efficiency programs and which measures we're including in those programs and the rebates that we're providing for each of those measures. Also looking at the current.
You said appliance. Does that mean that this applies to like refrigerators and TV sets, or does it also apply to building space conditioning and, EV charging and so on?
Yes, so I don't believe this would apply to EV charging, but it applies to
it applies to building heating and cooling.
Yes, heating and cooling, water heating, building envelope improvements, lighting, those types of end uses. This also takes into account.
So there's an audit of some sort of, like for residential space cooling, is this big a pie that we could cut back, and commercial heating is something else? I mean,
so
I sort of feel like there's a huge technical gap in this presentation and being able to understand what the technical potential is.
Yes, so this does include, I guess I'll start out by saying it's not based on an audit of each individual building. It's based on assumptions of general appliance saturation in the Palo Alto market.
Building envelope, typical building envelopes and stuff like that.
Correct.
Okay.
We do some audits of individual buildings through some of our programs and customers that we're partnering with, but we don't have a citywide audit that we're using as a data point for this study. It's based on estimated penetration of different appliances and based on our building, our set of different building vintages and assumed equipment.
Chair Scharf, Commissioner Gupta has his hand raised.
Commissioner Gupta.
Oh, sure. Thank you. I had just, I think, two questions. The first one is, seems to me that this is pretty narrow what this is affecting. Just reading the report, it says that the EE savings that can be counted have to be attributable to the mandated public benefits charge of the 2.85% of electric retail revenue. So that seems to not include a lot of potential savings. Is my understanding on that correct?
So I think that the idea behind that is that these savings are coming from our programs that are deemed as cost effective and therefore are funded through the public benefits.
Okay.
Does that answer the question?
Can I'd like to add to that. So for the purpose of modeling the goals, these are countable savings that are attributed to utility programs. Any kind of naturally occurring efficiency savings. So if someone's light bulb burns out and they have to go out to Home Depot and buy a light bulb, even though they can put in a more efficient light bulb because that's what's available in the market, that's already meets the current lighting standards, that savings from that new light bulb will not be counted by CPAU because that's what we call naturally occurring. So any efficiency standards that's already adopted by the federal government or by California, we can't count those savings based on the current standards.
Sure, but that was not what I was, at least what I was addressing. What I was addressing is, for example, I've worked in the energy side of many of the buildings, commercial buildings in Palo Alto in the Bay Area, and many of them, are cheaply built, have pretty weak envelopes. So as an example, there are a lot of buildings in the city that could have, where the owner could improve the building envelope and reduce energy consumption a lot. And my experience is that the numbers are at least an order of magnitude bigger than this. So I have a kind of cognitive dissonance around the size of these savings. And that's why I was asking about the technical assessment of the buildings in the city.
Yeah, and I think Christine and I's latest response was in trying to address Commissioner Gupta's question. And I guess additionally to what you were just saying, there is accommodation in this modeling for the behavior, for lack of a better word, of customers. So this isn't a full assuming every building that has equipment that could be more efficient is making it more efficient. It's partially based on the rates that we've seen of participation in our programs and of people going through with these upgrades.
Right. I think that's a reasonable way to project the forecast expectations, but it's not a way to set goals, right? Presumably you would set goals to be more ambitious than what people would do if we don't do anything.
Yeah,
right.
These aren't meant to be aspirational goals. They're more meant as a reflection of what we think is realistic and achievable based on our portfolio of programs.
So I had a second question. So on page 8 to 9 of the staff report, it talks about implementing AMI and then launching a conservation voltage reduction program using the AMI infrastructure on primary feeders, and that could potentially generate savings of up to 1% of the city's annual electricity load. Implementation expected to start in 2028. That sounds pretty interesting to me. Could you explain more about that?
Yes, so just give me 1 second. So yeah, I went into a little bit of detail, but yes, sorry, can we go back to slide 4? That mentions the conservation voltage reduction. So that's the change that you can see from that 2028 to 2032, the increase in that savings trend.
It's in the staff report. I didn't see it in the slides.
Sorry, yeah. Yeah, so, and as I mentioned when I was talking over this slide, the AMI metering is what will enable us to view and measure the voltage at different points along the feeder, particularly at the furthest point away from the substation, and measuring that voltage will allow us to optimize to stay within the acceptable threshold and adjust the voltage that's coming out from the substation in order to avoid unnecessary distribution of energy, essentially voltage being a component of the amount of watts that we're sending and using in our system.
I see. Thank you. And so the program of looking at that is what's funded by this public benefits charge, and so we can tag it to this energy efficiency goal. Is that how that works?
Yes. Well, I mean, looking at that, that charge will be something that we're participating or that we're doing anyway, and it's more just having the technology to enable us to operate in that way where we're not able to currently. And just to clarify, the cost estimates are very preliminary at this point, and when we actually have the infrastructure fully in place to start moving forward with the program, we would do a more detailed evaluation of what those costs would be.
I see. Thank you.
Go ahead.
My former comment notwithstanding about the idea of, when you consume an electron being pretty important in this era, I do obviously think that energy efficiency goals are important. This plot on slide number 6, shows that the tremendous potential that you've identified in the non-residential side. And I just want to make sure that our outreach programs are targeted to the sector in which there's the greatest potential for savings. Could you describe how the program costs on this next slide align with the non-residential sector opportunities, just to make sure we're not, spending a lot of money for very little return?
Yeah, so just to clarify what you're asking about the comparison to the budget, you're wondering if there's a disproportional spending on residential, for example, when commercial programs are a large portion of our savings. Is that correct? That's not the case. The residential spending aligns pretty closely with the percentage of savings that we're seeing. It's just that our residential programs are on a much smaller scale, and so the costs and the savings are both correspond to that.
The presentation would have been greatly improved, made better with lists of specific programs and what we've been doing thus far and what the programs are that are behind these aspirational or I don't even know what that means, aspirational goals. I hear reference to them, everything from light bulbs to commercial, heat pump, HVAC systems, but where is the slide with lists of programs and how much impact they have had thus far and how much impact they'll have in the timeframe that we're supposed to be recommending to council, these 2.8 cumulative, whatever the percentages are. It's just, the story just doesn't hang together. I won't be able to vote yes.
So I'm sorry you feel that way. The data that you're asking for is available in the SB 1037 report that we publish each year that is provided, I believe, as an informational item. If that would be helpful to include in these slides, that's feedback that I will definitely keep in mind.
Anyone else?
I move we accept the recommendation.
Second. All right, do you want to call the roll?
Commissioner Gupta,
Yes.
Commissioner Metz,
I don't see any connection between the technical potential and the actions, so I vote no.
Commissioner Croft,
Yes.
Chair Scharf,
Yes.
Vice Chair Mater,
Yes.
Commissioner Tucker,
No, for the reasons stated.
Commissioner Phillips.
Yes.
Motion carries 5-2.
Thank you.
Can we ask to, I mean, I have comments I didn't make because they're about programming. It sounds like a lot of us have interest in that. So do we want to talk about that in future topics or you want to talk about it now? It sounds like, I mean, I for sure have interest in what they are and.
Why don't we do it as a future topic?
Okay.
Because it's 9 o'clock already. Unless you.
I might make one final suggestion. Last month, I think the demand side management report, the DSM report, was attached to the quarterly report, which has a lot of information about programs, and that might be a useful and interesting thing for the commissioners to go back and read if you so choose to do so.
Then I'll respond, please, as a general comment, not for this presentation only, but for all of them that I've ever seen. The slide presentations need to be better. They need to tell a more complete story. They can't point to a document done X months ago on page 400. The stories and the business cases need to hang together better.
Actually, I will make one comment. Since I spent a bunch of time reading the annual reports that all the other POUs were submitting, and they're like hundreds of pages, and Palo Alto has its standard report that we have to submit on our energy efficiency achievements for the year. And so I looked at 2003, I looked at 2004, and Pasadena just happens to be right after us because it's in alphabetical order. And I just noticed, you know, you have to break down, you know, what savings you had, how much you spent, and then what kind of savings you had on the residential side and the commercial side. And Pasadena spent similar size utility. I'm sure the makeup is different. They had half savings in commercial, half in residential, but the savings were much greater than ours. And they had some programs that were, you know, different than ours, you know, haul away an old appliance, behavioral programming, like sending people behavioral stuff on their usage. I just thought it'd be interesting to, I'm not sure if we do this already, but a recommendation to kind of benchmark ourselves against others who are submitting that are similar to us and what kind of programs they're doing and see what they're doing, because possibly we'll find some others that could work.
Good suggestion. I would point out Pasadena has a whole lot of air conditioning, which Palo Alto does not.
Can I just clarify, you were talking about the SB 1037 annual reports that you were looking at, or which?
I can follow up with you after.
Okay,
I have them on my computer, but I don't know what they're called.
Okay.
All right, and that brings us to future topics for upcoming meetings. Staff, do you?
Sure. So you do have your 12-month rolling calendar. Ultimately, your next meeting is June, which you continue to have a full agenda. The wildfire mitigation plan that needs to be adopted annually with discussion about preparedness is set to be brought forward. We also are working on a connection fee update, so that will be brought forward as well. There's a couple other items in flight, such as an energy storage service agreement, as well as we're working on the tier 2 water allocation during a drought from Bosca, and the electric TOU rates. So we'll work with the chair and vice chair to figure out what mix amongst those will work. But like I said, the first two for sure, the latter three will figure out the ratio of time.
All right. Are there any commissioner comments and reports from meetings? Seeing none, we're, oh,
This will go back to director's report at the very beginning of the meeting, but wasn't there a big finance committee discussion today on, and it wasn't gas? Everything we talked about last month on the agenda? Did we cover that already tonight?
I just reported out that we had the meetings and discussions. They're still in process, to be honest. What happens is the finance committee does an initial review of things. It goes to makes tentative motions, as I alluded to before. All the items go to the full city council for a discussion Monday night in a study session. And then the finance committee will actually resume discussion of the items on May 20th for a formal recommendation. So we are in the midst of that process. Happy to provide an update. The current recommendation from the finance committee as of today is that they're going to talk with the council on Monday about is specifically on gas. They recommended that staff revise the FY 2026 rates in alignment with the current FY 2025 schedule escalated. So basically they're gonna continue to work on the 2025 COSA and provide a climate credit to G2 customers. And we will return the 2025 COSA back to actually this body, likely sometime after the summer, to do further analysis and discussion about rate design. So that's where we stand. I
Would
can't.
it be fair to say that the outcome of today's finance committee, I think it was chaired by Bert, was that all the advisory that this commission gave it last month, all that talk about funding a one-time, I don't know, $70 boost to residential bills out of the cap and trade, all of that debate, the vote, I think, was 6-5, 1 against, 1 abstained, I abstained, but all of that was sent back or remanded today. Is that fair to say? So it's just, we punted, or it's not, that recommendation will not be accepted.
I wouldn't say that it's not accepted. I think the finance committee took, the UAC took a strategy of basically kind of, how I kind of look at it is there were kind of 2 ways that the UAC was talking about, right? Do you move forward with the 2025 COSA and do a climate credit for the G1 customers and then do further discussion as you had recommended? Or the alternative is where council is, or the finance committee is currently recommending, which is increase the rates, but in alignment with the current 2025 rate structure. Same outcome in the sense of a climate credit to one of the customer classes and continued discussion on the COSA. So I think the inherent kind of, if I were to think about the values and the policy questions that the UAC asked and discussed, I think were used and helped guide the finance committee. I think they just took a slightly different lens to it.
That means that they would be using the previous COSA.
They would be for 1 year with the intention to continue and then move the 2025 COSA implementation to 2027's rates.
So what's the, well, maybe I should talk to the finance committee. It seems like a very unusual kick the can down the road approach.
But also, how is that allowable if we've done a cost of service study and we're not?
So I highly recommend the commission watch the finance committee meeting. It's probably not agendized for this evening
Thank
and
you.
I don't want to flood that, but I appreciate the interest and we'll keep you posted as we move through.
all right, thank you. With that, we're adjourned.